Story 1. Parents made me quit school to be unpaid nanny for little brother, so I ran away. Mom now stalking me, threatening kidnapping after failed attempt to drag me home. I, 15F, will be a junior in high school once the new school year starts. I have a little brother, I'll call Matt, 3M. My parents both work full-time jobs in the business district. I was a planned baby, but Matt wasn't. My parents considered putting him up for adoption, but couldn't do it. They don't know I know this. Once my mom ended her maternity leave 2 weeks early, there was a schedule of who watched Matt when. Mom leaves for work at 4:30 a.m., waking me up on the way. I watch Matt until I need to go to school at 7 o'clock, and by that time my dad is up and takes over. I get home from school at 3:45 p.m., and my dad leaves for his work at no later than 4 p.m. I watch him till my mom gets home at 6 p.m. For the first year, that's how it went. I was fine with that. Now my mom has shifted her hours to work later. I watch Matt till he sleeps, and I can't sleep till my mom gets home, which is usually 10 to 11 o'clock at night. On top of that, I do anything that needs doing at home. I'm in AP classes and have my homework to do as well. Matt's not very well behaved. He's had health issues since birth that cause him discomfort. He's a toddler, and I get that, but his tantrums and general demeanor make it hard for me to get things done. The two things that tore me down most happened a week before school ended back in May. I managed to talk to my mom and asked her if we could please hire a sitter to look after Matt. I want to take on some extracurriculars. Her response was they didn't need to waste money on that because they had me. 2 days later, my mom got home at 5 p.m., early for her, and after eating dinner told me to ask the school if I could shorten my class load next year in order to spend more time at home, since my dad also apparently wants to shift his hours. I told her no. She got mad, saying I needed to be more understanding and accepting. I had enough and blew up. I can't remember what all was said, but I do remember yelling that I wasn't my little brother's parent. I stormed to my room, stuffed some things in my backpack, and left while my mom was distracted by my brother. I'm safe. I called my grandmother and explained what was going on. She and my mother are estranged, but we managed to stay close. Once she picked me up and got the details, she said she understood. My parents blew up my phone demanding I come home and telling me I should be ashamed I'm acting this way. My grandmother blocked their numbers. She did talk to them, and they agreed I can stay where I'm at until I get my head on straight. I feel guilty for leaving my brother, but at the same time, I feel so worn out. Other family weighed in. While most are on my side, others say I need to accept my duties in the family and suck it up. I'm conflicted and don't know what to do. ITA for running away? Update in comments. Same day update, posting here in the comments, since doing it in the post pushed me over the limit. Thank you to everyone who left comments. I feel more confident in my decision now. A couple of people said I needed to talk to my parents about a sitter or boundaries. I've tried before. The last time they either brushed me off or said things like, "That costs so much money," and, "But you do such a good job," and, "You're the big sister, it's your duty to watch him." I looked up parentification, since I'd never heard it before, and all the boxes were ticked. I had no idea. My grandmother is talking to an attorney and wants to set up an arrangement that will let me stay with her my last 2 years of high school. After I graduate, I plan to go to college in another state. Thank you again for your kind words. If something major happens, I'll let you all know. OP is voted NTA. Update 2. July 16th, 2023. Almost 1 month later. It's been a few weeks, but quite a bit has happened. I'll try my best to keep things concise. Once again, thank you for all your comments and support. They meant a lot to myself and my grandmother, who says hello. Firstly, my father managed to find my post despite my efforts. He told my mother about it, and she proceeded to blast me to the members of my extended family via social media saying I made them look bad. She deleted the post a few hours later, according to my cousins who support me. A few days later, during a meeting between my parents and myself, my grandmother, and our lawyer, my father apologized to me, and I felt it was sincere. As for my mother, she was silently fuming. Matt was at their house with one of my aunts. They agreed, with great reluctance on my mother's end, to give my grandmother full custody of me for my remaining 3 years as a minor. The next day, my grandmother and some of my supportive family members helped me get what I had for belongings out of my parents' house. I didn't feel true relief until that moment. Now I'm trying to enjoy my summer. I'm hanging out with friends, going swimming. I'm relaxing. I'm finally reading books I bought 3 years ago that I never got a chance to read. I'm planning extracurriculars for next semester and even planning a birthday party. My first in 3 years, for my sweet 16 in February. I'm also helping my grandmother around the house. I do chores, but this time I'm getting an allowance. Even my sleep has improved. It's a whole new way of living, and it's kind of overwhelming, but I've never been happier. Hopefully, this is the last time I post. I'm gonna log off Reddit and go out with my grandmother for some shopping. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Did you get all of your documents? Opie. Our lawyer was with us when we went to get my things and requested all my important documents. My father handed them over. My mother hid in the master bedroom. Comment 2. Make sure to go completely no contact. Opie. Back when I first left the house, my grandmother blocked their numbers, and I blocked all their socials and emails. I don't hate them. Life's too short for hate. I don't even think I'm angry anymore, just disappointed and let down. Comment 3. Any chance they will neglect or abuse Matt when you're gone? Have they before? Opie. I don't believe they did. Mom would get frustrated because of how fussy he was, but never abused him. Dad was more patient with him. I think they honestly thought I had some gift when it came to him, like I was able to keep him behaved/calm. I wasn't. Comment 4. About her brother? Opie. I hope to reconnect with him once he's older, but with our mother being who she is, who knows? Update 3, February 18th, 2024, 7 months later. Hey everyone. I previously posted in the AITA subreddit about a situation between myself and my parents, mostly my mother. TLDR. I was parentified and forced to devote 99% of my free time to my younger brother. I got fed up and ran to my grandmother. Parents surrendered legal custody of me to her. There are more details in the 2 posts I made about the topic. Things have been going smoothly. I'm doing well in school, taking some extracurriculars, robotics and debate team, and still have time to read and hang out with friends. I have started to communicate with my dad. My decision. Never in person, just over the phone. Mostly it's small talk. I talk about school and classes, and he gives me updates on Matt, my little brother. I've not said a word to my mother directly since the day custody was given to my grandmother. The last time we spoke, my dad told me that Matt had realized I was no longer around and became more agitated. They hired a nanny to help out, but both my parents were still forced to cut back their hours. That was a week and a half ago. This past Saturday, I had my dream birthday party, which was themed after books. My birthday cake looked like a stack of books, snacks were themed after literary genres, and everyone came dressed as book characters. I dressed as Sherlock Holmes. We had a very cozy venue all to ourselves. And it was great. It was a very chill, relaxed party. My grandmother hired security for the party with a strict list of who was allowed. This was due to a couple of bullies at school who heard about my party and threatened to crash it. The party ended after a few hours, and most of the guests left. The ones left were my grandmother, myself, one of the guards, and my 2 closest friends. I excused myself to go to the restroom, and when I came out, one of my friends met me halfway down the hall. She tried to push me back into the restroom, saying my mother had shown up and was demanding to see me. I told nobody from my family about this party, not my dad, not even the ones who supported me, because of this exact possibility. I also didn't post about it on social media. I heard yelling from my grandmother and decided to confront the situation myself. The security guard was holding my mom back, and my grandmother was livid. The second my mother saw me, she became irate, screaming that I was a disgrace, that she was never going to let me just cut her off, and if I knew what was good for me, I'd come home. I didn't feel scared or even angry. I was just tired. I kind of sighed, pulled out my phone, and told her I was calling the police. It was up to her if she stayed to face them, but either way, I was filing a no-contact order. She went pale, screamed at me one last time, then ran off, getting into her car and speeding away. I was glad it didn't happen during the party, but it left me shaken. Needless to say, my grandmother and I will be speaking to our attorney tomorrow. I'm still not sure how she found out about the party, which is what spooks me the most. Do entitled/narcissistic parents just have some ability that lets them repeatedly attempt to screw up their kids' lives? I'm starting to feel like I'll have to watch out for my mom the rest of my life. Edit. To answer your question, yes, they try to ruin their children's life whenever they can. Why? Because they don't see that they are in fault, because they are too self-absorbed to have common sense. In their eyes, always others will be at fault. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Have you spoken to your dad since this incident? Or do you intend to? Or are you going and see with him too? If you speak to him, maybe he can give you information who told your mom, because this person needs to get out of the picture. I have this for you sums up pretty perfectly how narcissists are. Opie. I have not spoken to my dad since the incident. I really don't want to go no contact with him. He seems the most apologetic over what I went through and is trying to change, from what I've gathered through speaking to him. I never told him about the party, so he couldn't have informed my mother. I do intend to call him today and see what fallout happened after my mother left. Thank you for the link. Yeah, that adds up. Comment 2. Could she be tracking your phone? Opie. I thought about that and my grandmother agreed. We checked over my phone to see if there was anything of the sort and found nothing. Definitely considering a new phone. Comment 3. Maybe you should go to therapy? Opie. Thank you. I am in therapy. It's really helping me with a lot of the guilt and pressure I felt after running away. I won't lie, despite my posts in AITA, a good chunk of me wanted to give in and run right back home, but I knew that wasn't what I really wanted and also knew that if I did, I'd just keep sacrificing unnecessarily. Update 4. March 4th, 2024, 2 weeks later. Sorry for how late this update is. A lot has happened, and I've also been busy with schoolwork. I talked to my dad and told him what happened. He sounded horrified and apologized profusely. I told him not to, since it wasn't his fault. He said he'd get to the bottom of it and get back to me. In the meantime, we spoke to our lawyer, and he agreed to my idea of filing a no-contact order against my mother. It's currently in progress. My grandmother contacted my school to ensure that my mother was not permitted on campus or allowed to get any information about me. Both my grandmother and I got new phones and had my grandmother's car checked for AirTags. None were found. I checked out all my friends' social media, and nothing was posted before the party. I was baffled. 5 days later, I got a call back from my dad. Apparently, he put a lot of pressure on my mother, and she finally spilled the beans. She bumped into another parent at a store, the mom of one of my most recent friends who was unable to make the party. They caught a cold. Said mom was not aware of all the drama between my mother and I, giving enough information for my mother to put 2 and 2 together and figure out where the party was. I am just thankful she was unable to get the exact time of the party. She tried calling the venue, but we password locked. I think that's the right term. Everything, and they gave her no info. She didn't regret any of it and even suggested waiting off school grounds once school let out and try to drag me back by the hair one day. Just typing that makes me shiver and feel sick to my stomach. My dad was appalled, and apparently that was the breaking point. They had a huge argument, and to make a long story short, he said he was done. He's in the process of moving out and staying in a hotel currently. He's filing for divorce and full custody of Matt. He offered to pay the nanny extra to hire her himself for Matt's sake. Now, even the relatives that were on my mother's side have started to cut her off. She insists she did nothing wrong and that everything happening was my fault for being ungrateful and disloyal. All in all, there's hope for my dad and my brother. I think we can definitely have a better relationship in the future, so long as my mother stays out of the picture. Time will tell, I guess. And I guess that's it. Someone asked in the comments of my last post if I was planning on completely cutting my mother out of my life once the no-contact order was filed. I didn't want to. She's my mom. But the way she is now, I don't think I have a choice. It's for my safety and mental/physical/emotional well-being. She doesn't have my best interests at heart, only her own. It's sad, but I know it's not my fault she's the way she is now. Now on to the next story. Story 2. I caught my bill stealing money from me years ago. Now he's broke and begging to move in with his entitled wife, but I shrug him off. I, 39F, have been married to my husband for 12 years with 2 kids. I met my husband, Dan, 41M, in my mid-20s. He was living with his younger brother, Bran, 35M, when I first met him. This goes back to the time when I initially started going out with Dan. That was like 15 to 16 years ago. Bran was still in college, living with my husband. As we started going out, Dan eventually asked me to move in with them. They had rented a 2-bedroom spacious condo. Dan was paying for his brother and managing his own expenses. Moving in with him meant he would get help with the rent. I was sharing an apartment with my colleague back then. It was far from Dan's place. It wasn't cheap either. Commuting was a problem for us. I was in love, and after knowing him for 6 months, moving in with Dan made sense to me. It was a smooth stay until I started missing my stuff and money from my wallet in my closet. It started with money. I didn't notice it for a long time. It was a few cents which went missing from time to time. I'll tell you, I'm an extremely forgetful person. It is to such an extent that I write down all my passwords in a diary. I forget to respond to people for many days and wonder if I have something to do but just can't place my finger on what. Anyways, it was a few cents initially and then a few dollars. It wasn't happening every day, so I wasn't keeping a tab on my accounting. I thought I was not being calculative about my money. During the same time, I found my stuff missing from my closet. Earlier, it was just small makeup items. I didn't bother. I thought I was misplacing it at work. Eventually, I realized all the missing items were either unused or slightly used. I told Dan about it, and he thought I had forgotten it at my office or someone was stealing it from my bag at the office or at parties. Clearly, there was no reason to hunch that it was being stolen from the house. The house had 2 males and no one came home. My friends occasionally showed up, but doubting them didn't make any sense. I made up a theory that someone was stealing at my workplace. Soon, I got careful about my stuff. Once I bought a new perfume bottle and kept it inside the closet mindfully. 2 days later, it was missing. That was it. I knew it had to be home. My stuff was getting misplaced from home, and who else than Bran could do it? I wanted to tell Dan about it, but the matter was so petty that I didn't want to confront it without evidence. So, I placed a camera in my room facing the closet. That's where all the stuff went missing. I told Dan I needed to find out. I knew it was his brother stealing the stuff, but I told Dan that I felt my friend was doing so and I wanted to catch her red-handed. Dan didn't like the idea of placing a camera in our private space, but the camera angle didn't cover our bed, so he was good. I think he was also done with my constant nagging over losing my money and belongings. So he was like, let's get over it. I bought the camera, installed it, and then invited my friends over on a weekend. While Dan was keeping an eye on my friend, I knew who the culprit was. My friends got smashed and crashed at my place. Eventually, I and Dan also crashed on the living room couch. There was no place in the house. Dan's friends had also come over, and 3 of them occupied our bedroom. I know it sounds crazy, but we were in our mid-20s and this is how we used to party back then. Not sure about the Gen Z generation, but house parties for us meant 10+ people getting smashed and crashing up on a friend's couch. The next morning, when we reviewed the recordings, we found several of our items were getting stolen, and it was indeed my current Bill, Bran, pulling this off. He took that opportunity to be a jackpot because there were so many people around to put the blame on. My new dress, an expensive clutch, some unused perfume bottles, and a few dollars were on the list of missing items. I was glad to put on a camera, and Dan saw the truth about his brother. Dan called and confronted him. Instead of being apologetic, that dude called me a BTCH for recording him. I wanted to slap him and knock out his eyeballs, but I stood calm, seeing what Dan would do. It was almost 1 year of our relationship, and we both were pretty serious about each other. I wanted to test Dan on how he handled such a sensitive issue. Dan slapped him hard for abusing me and asked him to apologize. Bran was such an entitled monster that instead of being sorry, he blamed me for invading their privacy and intruding on their life. Both these brothers shared a good bond, and Bran felt I had come in between them. He did all these to chase me off. He said he deliberately did that and wasn't afraid to be caught. He was so sure that Dan would choose his side over me, and that's how he'll show my place. Dan threw him out of his house. After that, I opted to move out. I mean, Bran was his brother, and I was merely a GF of a few months. We've known each other for barely a year. Dan said it wasn't about how long. It was just about right and wrong, and Bran was clearly the one who wronged me. That was it. It strengthened our bond and inculcated trust in our relationship. Dan's parents tried to convince him to take in his brother, but he was adamant about not letting him in again. Fast forward to this day. Bran has lost his job in the pandemic and cannot manage his basic expenses. He wants us to take him in. We live in a 3-bedroom house with 2 kids. There is 1 extra room because the kids share 1 room. It's just a matter of a couple of years when both would need a separate room. Bill has a wife and a 5-year-old son. He is insisting that we let him in our extra room and his son in our kids' room. The kids' room is not spacious for 3. I also don't want his kids to be with mine. He is one of the most spoiled and pampered kids. He has never visited my house, thank God, but I have seen him bringing down my in-laws' house. Bill and his wife don't even school him. Forget about schooling, they don't even try to stop him. I don't want such a kid at my house. When Bill first approached my husband, he turned him down. Then, Bill brought Mill to convince my husband. Bill is using his sob story to gain sympathy and get an entry into our house. He was in retail. With the pandemic hitting, retail suffered, and he lost his job. He survived on his savings for a year. When the condition subsided, he interviewed for other jobs, but then the next wave popped up and the retail industry got completely shut again. Now he wants us to take him in. Initially, my husband had turned down the request, but with my Mill's entry into the dynamics, I feel my husband is going to change his mind. It's just not about the past. Even after 12 years of my marriage to this family, I'm still not on good terms with Bill and his family. I won't comment about Bill's wife because we have had very limited interaction, but Bill has been an evil with me in the past, and his son is also one pampered kid. I really don't know how to dodge this situation. Update 1. Answering some of the common questions from the last post. Where was the Bill all these while after he was evicted by my husband from the apartment? After leaving my husband's apartment, he moved to his college dorm. He was in limited contact with my husband and not at all connected with me until my husband announced his decision to marry me. Bill was the first one to raise his eyebrows. He even badmouthed about me to my in-laws. He told them I was controlling and dominating. He continued doing so even after the wedding. He was invited to the wedding because the event was organized in a way that all my sisters and friends would be bridesmaids and all of my husband's brothers and friends would be groomsmen. In that setup, it was almost impossible to cut off Bran from the wedding, so I kind of agreed to let him into our wedding. He maintained distance from me, and so did I. That was it. Did he invite us to his wedding? No. He did the courthouse wedding, and no one from the family was invited except for my parents-in-law. It was a small and swift wedding. At least that was the reason given to all of us for no invitation. But as per the gossip mongers of the family, the actual reason was that Bill married on a tight budget. He doesn't make enough and his wife doesn't work. She still doesn't work, and all the responsibility falls on Bill. The update is, after my Mill got involved, things got complicated. She has been pestering my husband to let Bill live with us. My husband tried to ignore it a few times, but ultimately he fell prey to the emotional trap of helping the younger brother and standing up for family. My husband came to me and said that in-laws were pestering him to the point that it was becoming difficult for him to turn them down. He asked if there's any possibility I would agree to let Bran into our house. He was scared of the past. I asked him, do we know how long he's going to stay with us? Because honestly, no one knows when this pandemic thing is going to end. And is he going to pay for the groceries and other bills? We can ignore the house rent. It won't increase with their addition, but other bills would. I asked my husband if we have enough to feed an extra 3 people. He said no. I made him understand we cannot let Bill's son starve while feeding our own children just because his father doesn't earn, or how we split the groceries in the same kitchen. I work while Bill's wife doesn't, and I cannot keep an eye on her if she is using my stuff in the kitchen. Letting him in was not only about our privacy or our past bitterness but also practicality. We need to straighten out these things before taking any decision. Husband knew that I was not ready for this, but he was also aware that my concerns were genuine. He said next time Bill or Mill would call him, he would discuss all these matters with them and see what they have to offer. I just hope my husband makes a mindful decision and doesn't pile up an extra load on himself. Though we both are working and with God's grace still have the job, we don't know until when. There is so much uncertainty with this new variant of virus popping up every now and then. We need to save for the rainy days. In this situation, we cannot afford to take extra burden on ourselves, and especially of those people who never loved and respected us. There's also one more thing that I didn't tell my husband yet, but if such a situation arises, I will bring this up. My parents-in-law live in a spacious 2-bedroom house with an extra room used to store discarded items. They can adjust in one room and let Bill and his wife take another one. The storehouse can be converted into a kid's den. If Mill is so concerned about Bill, she can well offer to let them stay with her. Isn't this a hypocrisy? Update 2. Yeah, so my husband discussed all those concerns with Bill, and my dread was also true. Bill doesn't intend to pay us for any of the household bills. He says he cannot afford to. I don't know how he has been managing to feed his family until now. Bill was like, "You guys still have a job and both of you earn. Can't you take care of our expenses for a few months?" It was so spineless of him to say this. We do earn, but it doesn't mean we are obliged to bear their expenses. It wasn't even a request anymore, more like an entitlement in order. My husband said we are not in a position to bear the expenses of 3 extra people. A day later, Mill called up my husband and said we needed to sort this out. Bill is in serious crisis, and as a family we should help him. She suggested that we can agree on a middle ground. She added Bill to the call to sort out the matter. She said that we let them in and they'll take care of themselves. Though Bill tried to object, Mill shut him up and said, "First get in the house, and then we'll figure it out." Her statement was suspicious and shady. I was listening to the conversation thoroughly. I told my husband that there's no way we can let them in because their intentions don't look good. Husband placed the call on mute to discuss the details with me. Bill thought husband had hung up and he started cussing me. He told Mill that I was the manipulative BTCH who was not letting my husband help him. He was like, "I told you, Mom. She has always been a control freak and she's using Dan as a puppet. She has always done that. She never liked my closeness with Dan. She manipulated Dan to throw me out of the apartment, falsely accusing me of stealing." Husband heard all of it and so did I. There was nothing left to be considered. Husband unmuted the call and said he heard everything and there's no way he's going to have him here at our place. After my husband hung up the call, Mill called me separately, and she was like, "What did you gain by troubling my son? He's already in so much problem and you're adding to it. What would happen if you just let him in your spare room? They are not robbers to get away with your food and stuff." I was baffled after hearing Bill cursing me. She was still hoping that I would help him. She didn't stop him from using the B word for me. I lost my composure. I said, if she was so moved by her son's misery, why doesn't she let him in their house? They also have an extra room in a storehouse. What's the problem in having them? She didn't see this coming. After fumbling for a moment, she said that Phil was an old man and gets headaches with noise. Bill has a 5-year-old boy, and Phil would be disturbed by his chaos. The truth came out. She knows how monster of a child Bill's son was, and she doesn't want to have him around. What a hypocrisy. She can't bear to have her grandchild around but expects me to tolerate his mischief. I told her all of this, and she started fuming. She said I was just assuming things and accusing her of something which is not true. She didn't volunteer just because of Phil. That old man gets anxious with any minor chaos. He is in his 80s and wants a peaceful life. I said, everyone is entitled to a peaceful life, at least in their own house, and she was trying to rip us off that peace. She suggested that maybe it could be an opportunity for Bill's son to learn some manners and discipline from my children. I said, what if my children get influenced otherwise? You know, children pick up bad things more easily than good stuff. When she no longer could argue with me, she was like, Bran was right. You're indeed manipulative and strong-headed. No wonder my son cannot make any decision of his own. You're so dominant. I said, maybe he listens to me because I speak logic and not nonsense like you guys. She hung up cursing me. I told my husband the details about the call. He asked me not to think a lot about this. We have made up our minds, and we're not going to let them in and ruin our peaceful life. I just wish he stays strong in his decision and doesn't cave into their pressure. Update 3. I got a call from Bill's wife after a week of what happened last. She was very polite and gentle in her greetings. No, it didn't sound pretentious for some reason. She sounded genuine. Maybe she was genuine. She told me that she knows everything that have been happening around. I kind of got embarrassed that I denied them entry to my house. Yet she was so polite. But I remained stiff. She said, I understand your concern and I don't want to burden you. But the thing is we really need help. They have exhausted all their savings covering the basic needs of house rent and other necessities. She also told me that she has also taken up a job at a restaurant to survive. I didn't ask what kind of job it was. She isn't a chef, so I'm guessing it would be at the counter. Makes me wonder about the pay. She said she has been asking Bill to take up whatever job is available in the market currently. But he says he cannot do odd jobs. He prefers to remain jobless and pile up on others instead of taking any other job. That was ridiculous. I won't deny that I melted to hear her misery. But she told me that she doesn't want such a favor from us because Bill would become more careless if he gets served free without lifting his finger. I sighed in relief because after such intense conversation, it would have been difficult for me to turn her down. She said she wanted to borrow some money from me, and she would return it in installments. She said that the apartment in which they were living was up for lease at a discounted price due to the pandemic crisis on retail property. She wanted to lease the house to be able to save up the monthly rent. The deal made sense, but she didn't have an aggregated amount. I said I could not commit right away. I needed to discuss this with my husband. She requested that we keep it confined within ourselves. She said Bill was furious at me and would rebuke her for asking for it from me. She said that though we never got a chance to bond, she felt a warmth for me and thought I would be helpful. I assured her that I would keep it within ourselves and would get back to her after discussing this with my husband. I discussed that with my husband. The first thing Dan asked me was, "Do I believe her?" He said, "It's risky. It might be possible that Bran was using her to get money from us because now that he has fought with us, there's no way we're going to help him." He made sense. Could be possible that I was getting tricked into it, so I just dropped the idea. I was hoping that she would follow up like Bill used to do for the house. But weeks passed. She didn't call or text me. Guilty of admitting, but I almost forgot about this amidst work and kids. One day I was mindlessly scrolling the social media when I remember about this. I texted her asking if she was able to manage the money for the lease. She replied, "No." I apologized to her. I was about to text that I forgot about responding to her. But she responded that she understands that she cannot expect any favor from me after what Bill had done to us. That's the reason she didn't follow up. I felt an eerie sensation passing down my spine. I felt so terrible. I called her and apologized. She said it was fine and didn't request for the money. She was still polite and gentle. I asked for her account details to make the transfer. She refused, saying it was fine, but I insisted. She said that they were due to vacate the house in the next few days and she wasn't sure if the owner had leased it out to someone else. I asked her to check ASAP. She was still reluctant, but I assured her that I trust her and was ready to lend. She said, "Okay," and hung up. She called me back after some time and said it was still available and at a slightly cheaper rate because the owner was not getting any takers due to the COVID crisis. I was so relieved. I made the transfer and asked her to finalize the deal with the property owner. This time, I didn't even discuss this with my husband. I was so sure to help her out. After the paperwork was done, she called me again, thanking and assuring me that she would repay it in installments. I asked her, what did she say to Bill? She had told him that she had borrowed the money from her employer and the money would be deducted from her salary every month. She said if she tells my name, Bill would refuse to pay. I asked her, what was their plan after vacating the house? She said she was planning to move with her mom to the suburbs. It was quite far off from the city in her workplace, but she had no other options. Also, there was not enough space for 3, but her mom had still agreed to have them. However, Bill was not ready to move in there. He was trying to negotiate with Mill to let them in, but Mill was not agreeing. I wanted to ask how her son is so pampered and doesn't listen to anyone. But before I could ask, she told me that Bill had spoiled the kid to the extent that he didn't even listen to her. He doesn't let her discipline him, and if she ever tries to school him, he bashes her. I wanted to ask her why she even married that bum, why she still hasn't divorced him yet, but that was too personal and I didn't want to hurt her. I feel he was the one not letting her work until now, and now that she's earning, it's just a matter of time before she's going to kick him out. She told me that she would be leasing the house in her name. I feel that's her plan. I'll be glad to know when she gets rid of him. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Wife cheated and ruined our marriage days before Christmas and can't wait to have children with AP. I'm not sure how long this post will be. I just want to say what happened in the hopes that it will make me feel even a little bit better and provide some catharsis. Some quick background first. My now ex-wife and I had been together for 6 years and were married in February of this year. I thought we were a fantastic couple. We did a lot of things together. I always endeavored to be a consistently interesting person. I took her on random dates to new places and peppered little romantic gestures every now and then. About 4 to 5 months ago, after becoming upset over the lack of friends in her life aside from me, she met a new group of friends through an online meetup group. I was super supportive of this since one person alone shouldn't be your only source of happiness. Anyway, a month or so passes, and there seemed to be one guy in the group she began to spend more and more time with. Admittedly, I got a bit jealous, but I thought, what the hell? I trusted her completely, and she's entitled to friends. I wasn't prepared to interfere in that. Weeks pass, and now she is going around to his house, which he shared with other housemates. She would apparently play board games with this guy and the other housemates and would occasionally send me pictures of what she was up to there, which helped allay some of my concerns. However, by this point, red flags were beginning to pop up all over the place, and my gut was telling me something wasn't right. She would spend most evenings texting this guy on her phone. She'd take her phone into the shower with her. Also, on multiple nights, she would say she was tired and that she was going to bed early, yet I'd go in to grab something from the bedroom a couple of hours later and see her still lay awake on her phone, probably talking to this guy. By this point, I was feeling extremely uncomfortable with the situation. I thought the amount of time she was spending at this guy's house, particularly after spending a day out with him, was beyond inappropriate. So I decided to speak to her. I told her my concerns and that I didn't mind her being friends with this guy, but she needed to reel it in. She accused me of being jealous and needy. She told me that she enjoyed spending time with this guy and that they had a lot in common. Fast forward another week or so, she tells me she's going into town to find a present for her niece and leaves. My gut was telling me she was lying. Now I knew where this guy lived because I actually dropped him off after a night out one night. So I went to his house. My heart dropped into my stomach when I saw her car parked outside. I began hyperventilating and panicking. I felt drunk as I walked back to my car. On the drive home, I was crying uncontrollably. I was so out of it. I almost had an accident after running a red light. When I got back, I tried to regain my composure. I paced for a while and started to calm down. Not long afterward, she called me. I asked her how her day was, and she said it was good, but she wasn't able to find a present for her niece. I wonder why. I told her to come home immediately. She asked why, and I said I needed to speak to her. When she came through the door, I asked her if she really had been into town to look for presents. She continued her pretense and lied again. I told her I knew where she'd been. Her expression turned from confusion to shock instantly. She sat down and explained to me that she'd just been around there for coffee in a chat. I asked her why she lied to me, and she said that she didn't want to compound my jealousy and insecurity. I'm still stunned that she said this. What could compound insecurity more than lying about your whereabouts and going to another man's house? She insisted that nothing at all happened, that she was considering my feelings and just wanted to be with her friend without me worrying what she was doing. Well, like the idiot I am, I believed her. By this point, I was certain that I was being needlessly jealous and clingy. Little did I know that she was gaslighting me. Yet another week passes and I'm in work. She texts me to ask if it's okay with me to go around to this guy's house again after she finishes work for a coffee. She finished work a few hours before me, so I thought, fine, I won't be home anyway, and told her to go for it. Later that day, whilst I was sat in traffic on the way home from work, I get another text. This time, she tells me she's stopping over. It is for dinner. I became incensed. I blew up at her over text, telling her I didn't want her to come back tonight and for her to just stay there. I told her that by this point it was clearly an emotional affair at the very least. She asked me why I was doing this, and I told her that I'd been putting up with this for 2 months now and that the whole situation was making me feel constantly nauseous and that something was seriously wrong because my gut was screaming at me. She pleaded with me to let her come home so we could talk. I said no and didn't speak to her again until the following night. Like the idiot I am, I texted her saying I'd made a massive error of judgment and that she could come home. When she came back, she told me that I'd seriously damaged our relationship and that she doesn't know if she could trust me again. I wanted so hard to tell her that's exactly what she did by lying a week prior, but I bit my tongue, chalking it down to my jealousy issues arising again. I apologized for my actions, and things slowly started to go back to normal. Or so I thought. Around December 20th, she tells me that she was going to go to her sister's late on Christmas Eve to spend time there on Christmas Day with her and her niece and nephew. However, she wanted to spend a good couple of days with me first and wanted us to spend the 23rd and 24th together, with that being our Christmas. I was upset that she wouldn't be here on Christmas Day, but I respected her wishes and went through with it. Those 2 days ended up being really nice. We cooked Christmas dinner together, made some snacks, watched Netflix, and snuggled. I enjoyed it so much. She was due to head off to her sister's at around 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve. I helped her pack a few things, but all of a sudden, I had a realization about something. She told me her sister was due back home at around 5:30 because she was going shopping, but I also remembered that this guy finished work around 6 o'clock. Immediately, my suspicion kicked into overdrive, but I tried to kick it back down. She wouldn't go to his house on Christmas Eve, would she? She wouldn't be so callous as to leave me over Christmas, would she? I decided to once again ignore my gut and put it down to jealousy and insecurity. If I accused her of potentially doing such a thing, I could have jeopardized the relationship. So I sucked it up. Before she left, I surprised her with a few presents. They were all things I knew she'd love. She said she felt really guilty because she couldn't afford to get me anything this year. I said it was okay and that I bought them her not because I expected something in return but because I loved her and wanted her to have them. We kissed and she said goodbye. That was the last time I'll hopefully ever see her. A few hours after she left, I remembered I had to respond to an email, so I jumped on Gmail. Only, she had left herself logged in on the computer. What I found absolutely crushed me. For whatever reason, she had downloaded the WhatsApp chat between herself and the other guy onto her Gmail. I opened it and read through. This had been going on for almost 2 months. What started out as light flirting descended into digital flirting. She was saying how she loved being with him and cuddling on his sofa when they watched the film. She said how she would send him crappy pictures if it would motivate him to get home sooner. She requested pictures of him, videos of him showing off and crapping off. He sent her crap pics and she'd sent him who knows how many. This goes on for weeks. At the beginning of December, they apparently slept together. What's doubly gut-wrenching is the fact that, judging by the timestamps, she was saying how much she enjoyed it during a time I was sat in the living room with her. Towards the end of the messages, which ended around December 18th, they were both saying how they can't wait to be together. The guy even said she should steal my PC and VR headset before she goes because he wants to play it. She laughed. At this point, I was suffering a massive emotional breakdown. In the midst of it all, I decided to check her location history through Google, and it confirmed my suspicions. She was at his house that very moment. She left me on Christmas Eve to be with this guy. To add yet more salt to the wound, I scrolled down her emails and found that she'd ordered a t-shirt for this guy as a Christmas present, despite telling me she couldn't afford to buy me anything. There was no doubt in my mind now that this relationship was finished. I called her to tell her I knew what was going on, but before I did, I asked her where she was to see if she'd finally fess up. She told me that she couldn't deal with this mistrust anymore and that she was at her sister's. She lied to me and convinced me I was the one in the wrong right up until the end. I told her about the conversations she'd been having with this guy, how she gaslighted me, and caused a massive emotional breakdown. Despite seeing me in such a state, she continued to lie to me and offered me no support. The woman I'd supported for 7 years through some dark times offered me nothing in return at a time I needed her the most. As I was saying all this, she remained mostly silent with only an occasional "I know" coming through. I ended the call telling her I never wanted to see her again. I also discovered through her WhatsApp exchange that she told her sister what was going on, and her sister said nothing to me. She remained complicit in the whole thing. I just can't believe it. What a disgraceful family. Yesterday, I packed all of her crap into bags and simply left it in the garden for her to collect whatever she wants. I haven't damaged any of her property, though it took a Herculean effort not to. I am better than that. Right now, I'm in a very dark place. I cry seemingly at random with just minor triggers. I've been having what I think are panic attacks. My heart beats really fast when I lie in bed. I feel constantly sick. I even woke up twice a couple of nights ago, panic-stricken and in a state of confusion that she was in the house and looking for me. I am utterly devastated and broken. I am hoping to move on from this, but I'm scared it will taint all future relationships and that this betrayal will haunt me for the rest of my life. She's ruined me. Update 1. So, it's been 4 days now since D-Day. I haven't been feeling particularly well since that day, and the pain is still very fresh. I've been crying on and off the entire time. Last night was pretty bad. I just lay in bed and sobbed for 10 straight minutes. I am truly at my lowest point right now. She has texted multiple times since Sunday. She told me she had been feeling confused for months, that all the feelings she had for me were very real, and that none of what she had done has been logical. She then says that she doesn't expect to be taken back, but she would like to mend our friendship. Finally, she tells me that she doesn't want our marriage to end over text, as if it didn't end the moment she cheated, and that I need to speak to her face to scream and shout at her if that's what is necessary and to give me closure. All of this made me very angry. I can't believe she wants me to consider mending our friendship, as if there's any value in having her as a friend after what she's done. Not only that, but she wants me to meet her and speak with her. Does she expect a heart-to-heart where she can try and justify the months of emotional abuse she put me through? She is delusional. I haven't responded to these texts, and I don't plan to. One thing I am worried about, though, is her suddenly turning up to the house, trying to apologize or threatening to do something if I don't communicate with her. I couldn't handle that. She has tortured me enough. So yeah, that's been the last few days. It's been very, very bad. But I have a friend coming over tomorrow night, so I have a good distraction for the New Year's weekend at least. Thanks again for all of your encouraging comments on my last post. Everyone. Update 2. It's been just over a month since D-Day, and I thought I'd check in and let you know how things are going. The first 2 weeks of January were quite possibly the worst of my entire life. I sunk to absolute rock bottom. I cried multiple times every single day. I stopped eating and lost weight to the point that people were asking me if I was unwell, and I even contemplated self-slaughtering. I will admit to holding a knife to my wrists and being on the precipice of doing something really, really bad during one terrible night. They were extremely dark days. Now we're over a month in, things have improved. I still cry, but not as often. My appetite is slowly coming back, and I don't feel as despondent. I do still get a rush of intense and upsetting feelings every other day or so, as well as thoughts that I'll never find anyone else, but I'm not as consumed by them. As far as no contact goes, I've managed to maintain it, though it's been an unbelievably difficult task. I blocked her number, but she got through to me via a few other means, such as through one of my old email addresses. She did send me quite a long letter via email in early January saying she deeply regretted what she did, and that she knows I want her to suffer, and that she will for the rest of her life. She also went on to say that I was the only one who made her feel truly attractive, and then pleaded with me to acknowledge that I knew her feelings for me were always real. In short, it was all the usual stuff you'd expect to see from a cheater and a narcissist. I'm still firm in my decision not to give her any opportunity for reconciliation. I have nothing to gain from it, and she will just want to feel more at ease in the face of her actions. The novelty of the affair is probably beginning to wear off now too, and the guilt will soon eat her alive if it isn't doing so already. My recovery process has been fairly spotty, but I'm just trying to take things one day at a time. Work has helped as well to keep me occupied throughout the week and give me a purpose, and in the evenings I really enjoy cooking. It's hard to feel sad when the kitchen smells so amazing. I've also done some light socializing, though money is quite tight at the moment, so I can't do as much as I'd like, unfortunately. Finally, I've been spending a ton of time with my dog. I'm so thankful for the comfort she's provided me over the last month. In the end, I think the most important things on my road to recovery have been allowing all of my grief to process, learning to accept the situation I'm in, and beginning to enjoy my own company. It's undoubtedly been a tough time, and I imagine it will be for a while yet, but I feel as though I have both of my hands on the ledge now instead of just one. Thanks for reading, and I really hope you're all doing okay out there. Update 3. So here I stand, 5 weeks removed from D-Day. At the moment, I'm still a bit scattered, emotionally at least. Sometimes I'll go for hours and hours, sometimes almost a whole day, without thinking about her and what she did. Other times, however, I'll see or do something that will suddenly and inadvertently trigger a powerful memory of the relationship. For example, a few days ago, I was doing some tidying up around the house when I found a keepsake she had bought me many years ago entitled, "To the Man I Love." Moments like that can sometimes bring my whole day crashing down. Throughout this ordeal, I've been coping mostly by keeping myself as busy and distracted as possible. I'll cook from scratch, binge-watch TV shows, go for lengthy walks with my dog, write, play video games, etc. The hardest time tends to come when I'm in bed at night and alone with my thoughts. My mind often wanders back to that evening on Christmas Eve when I discovered she was cheating. I can sometimes become trapped in a mental loop replaying the events over and over in my head. If my thoughts continue to drift, I invariably end up thinking about her and the other guy having sex, which quickly makes me feel physically sick and at one point brought me to the cusp of a panic attack again. Though these thoughts are becoming less and less intrusive as time goes on. Maintaining no contact is absolutely crucial for me at this stage. As tough as it's been not to communicate with her for over a month and counting, the clarity it's brought me has made it more than worthwhile. It has allowed the fog to clear and for me to see the situation for what it is. I am emerging from the other side of this with my self-respect, my dignity, and my values and strength of character intact. I always told my ex-wife that infidelity was an immediate deal-breaker in a relationship and that I would promptly remove anyone from my life if they were to betray me in such a way. Perhaps she thought she could use my love of her against me to reconcile, to get a second chance, or to at the very least remain friends. But the situation following her affair has unfolded in exactly the way I always said it would. She made a conscious decision to betray me, and I stuck to my guns and ended the relationship instantly. My actions have earned me a ton of respect from friends and colleagues alike. They commend my strength and unwavering commitment to upholding my values. As a result, I can look myself in the mirror and truly admire the man staring back at me. A lot of people struggle with serious self-esteem and confidence issues in these circumstances, and whilst both have been damaged for me to an extent, I still hold a lot of value in myself. It helps to reiterate to myself daily that I am the prize and that she will look for me in every man she is with in the future. But she will never find me because I'm not replaceable. Through her selfishness, she has lost a good man. I was always and always would have been loyal to her because I loved her and respected her immensely. Unfortunately, until she confronts her own deep-rooted issues, she is destined to repeat this behavior time and again, and will always live with the belief that someone else is responsible for her happiness. In the end, her actions may have knocked me down, but I'll get back up again. Only this time I'll be even stronger. And remember, always love and look after yourself. After all, you're the most valuable person you know. Finally, thank you to everyone who has followed my story and offered support throughout this journey. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Rich Mill hates my job, made me cry at her grand party, and tried to buy my husband away, but I tricked her into wearing my work uniform at her golden child's wedding. I, 24F, desperately need advice, so I am reaching out here hoping someone will be able to help me. I've been married to my handsome husband, Andrew, 26M, for 3 years. I work at a local diner as a waitress, and Andrew works at a restaurant. I would love to say our marriage has been amazing, but unfortunately, my MIL, Gloria, F50, has made our marriage and dating years a nightmare. On top of that, I am currently 19 weeks pregnant, so I am super emotional right now, and Gloria makes me cry all the time with her snarky comments and constant put-downs. Gloria and I have never had a good relationship. She is super wealthy, and she absolutely hates that I work at a diner making only minimum wage. She makes comments all the time, saying I should be making more money to ease Andrew's stress. She says I'm making life hard on him. Andrew also makes a low income in the restaurant, so no, we are not wealthy like her, but we make it work. What Gloria doesn't realize is she is the one putting stress on both of us. You see, Gloria was always the breadwinner of her family, as well as being a single mom to Andrew and his little brother, Michael, M25. Apparently, Andrew's dad left the picture shortly after they had the boys. Gloria divorced him and took him for all he was worth, and they never heard from him since. My guess is he could not deal with Gloria's narcissistic personality. But anyway, Gloria is so proud of making money and being a single mom that she thinks I should be contributing more money to my little family, just like she did. All she thinks about is money and her reputation, and it is sickening. Gloria is constantly comparing me to her perfect son Michael's fiancée, Deborah, F23. I can see why she thinks Michael is perfect, as he is a really down-to-earth guy despite being a well-off doctor. He and I have been friends for years, and he is actually the one who introduced me to Andrew. Deborah is perfect in Gloria's eyes because she works as an intern working towards helping kids suffering from cancer, while I just mindlessly hand people diner food. Deborah is also gorgeous, with beautiful long blonde hair, big blue eyes, and skin as smooth as a baby's, while I have short black hair, small dark eyes, and blemishes on my skin. Gloria is constantly referring to Deborah as the daughter she never had, while I'm just the girl Andrew settled for. Gloria thinks Michael and Deborah are the perfect couple, and Andrew and I need to try to be more like them. In fact, when I told Gloria I am pregnant, her response was, "Oh, while Deborah is saving children's lives, you will be busy screwing your child's life up. What a shame." I have come to expect mean comments from Gloria, even though I go beyond my means to impress her to try to be like Deborah. I have even gone as far as to ask Andrew what Gloria's favorite flowers were, so I could surprise her with them for Mother's Day and bring her a nice gift. But no matter what I do, she finds fault in my offerings and makes me look like the worst person on the planet. I just cannot please Gloria. Gloria's hatred of me began on day one of my relationship with Andrew. When we first started dating, I told Gloria I worked at a diner, and obviously that did not go over well. On my next date with Andrew the following weekend, he told me Gloria had set him up on a surprise blind date with her best friend's daughter immediately after meeting me because the other girl had a swanky office job and made a hefty salary with benefits. To this day, I am appalled she would try to pull that kind of stunt when Andrew and I are clearly meant to be together, but obviously, she is all about money and status, and I just don't fit her high expectations for her son and her family. Well, last night was one of the worst nights I've ever experienced with Gloria, and I was left embarrassed and crying, and I am still upset now. A few months ago, Gloria began planning her grand party, a super fancy party to celebrate her early retirement, which she achieved by working 14-hour days, 7 days per week at a publishing house. The party was going to be extremely extravagant to show off her ability to achieve retirement more than a decade ahead of the expected time at the age of 50. She invited us to her party only because Andrew happened to be there when she invited Michael and Deborah. Don't get me wrong, she loves Andrew, but this woman definitely does not like me, so I think I was invited because she felt obligated to include me. When she invited us, she gave Andrew specific instructions such as the location, time, and the dress code of the event. He was told we must look dazzling and rich, not hobo like usual, which made me annoyed, but we prepared appropriately. I saved a few weeks' pay and bought a fancy dress, and Andrew bought a nice suit and tie. We would certainly look the part. Even though we thought we had it all figured out, I was dreading the party. I did not want to go. I am not much of a people person for one. Secondly, I am terrified of Gloria. So why on earth would I want to go to a party that is basically just celebrating how awesome she thinks she is? Yesterday was the day of the party, and I had to work the day shift at the diner as usual, and then I was to meet Andrew at the venue. I figured I would do my makeup and hair before work, do my shift, then spruce up and change at work before getting to the venue. I did not have much time between my shift and the party, but I figured I would have to make it work. I worked my shift as normal with nice makeup and my hair slightly fancier than normal. After my shift, I went to my car, grabbed my dress and my shoes, and went back into work to put it on. I was still dreading going to the party but figured it would be fun to dress up for once, and I would just try to have fun for once. I unzipped the dress cover, pulled the dress up, and to my surprise, the dress did not fit. I had picked the dress out a few weeks back, and being 19 weeks pregnant, I guess I got bigger, and my dress no longer fit me. I panicked and started thinking of my options. There were no options. I had no other dress. My house was too far to grab another one, plus I did not own anything else remotely fancy, and there was absolutely no time for me to go purchase another one. I did not know what to do. The clock was ticking, and I have a bit of pregnancy brain, so I had to go to the party in my work outfit, my dumb black diner dress. As I drove there, I cried as I knew the wrath I was about to face. As I cried, my makeup smeared down my panic-stricken face, making me look even worse. I showed up to the venue and found Andrew and Michael standing outside. I explained what had happened, and while Michael laughed it off and seemed understanding, Andrew seemed a little irritated at first. He then noticed I had been crying as my makeup was smudged, and he became somewhat more understanding and told me that everyone should just be happy to have me there. I felt comforted by him, so I sucked it up and walked into the venue with Andrew and Michael by my side. I walked in and immediately regretted my decision. The other women were all dressed in ball gowns with embroidery and crystals and lace. Even the dress I had picked out would have stood out like a sore thumb. People began staring at me immediately, pointing and whispering to each other. I swear I could hear laughter, and I know it was directed at me, too, which made me feel so embarrassed. I just stood there in my stupid diner attire, a little black dress with white trim. I knew it was bad, but the gravity of the situation was about to sink in really quickly. Not even 5 minutes after we arrived, Gloria stormed over and pulled us into the hallway of the venue. She said she could not believe I would show up looking worse than her maid, in fact, exactly like a maid. She told me I have some nerve showing up like that and that her rich friends were all asking why I was dressed that way. She even said she overheard one lady say, "Who invited the help?" She demanded to know where my ball gown was. I told her what happened and that it could not fit, to which she threw her head back and said, "Oh, you are such a joke." Then she ripped my name tag off my chest, which I forgot I was even wearing, and she mockingly said, "Look at me. I'm Kate. Poor me. I'm so poor. I am dressed like a maid at a grand party. I just want everyone to feel bad for me because I work at a diner making pennies an hour. I can't even afford this baby I'm carrying. But don't worry, my mother-in-law will bail me out like she always does." She stood there fuming mad as I stood there embarrassed but also fuming mad that she had the audacity to say such terrible things to me. I began to cry silently and did not know how to reply to such insults as those. What do you even say to that? Then she told us to leave and stormed off back to her party before I could even form a response. I left the party with my husband feeling disgusted with her and myself. She has a way of making me feel like maybe I am not good enough for Andrew or anyone for that matter. I hugged Andrew outside the venue and continued sobbing. We eventually parted ways, and I continued crying as I drove my car back home. I thought about the words Gloria said to us at the venue, and at this moment, I am very disappointed I didn't stand up for myself. The whole thing felt like such an attack, and I am left feeling confused and so hurt. I don't know what she means by her bailing me out, as she has never spent a dime on us or the baby I am carrying, and I don't plan on ever asking her for any help, either. Today is the day after the party, and Gloria is blowing up our phones with voicemails and texts scolding us, but mainly me of my indecency at her party, asking me how dare I embarrass her, that we are the talk of the town now, and that people should be talking about how grand her party was, not how cheap the guests were. Of course, she also keeps mentioning that Michael and Deborah look stunning and that they think I should never have showed up looking like the train wreck I did. She also threw in there that if I'd stopped pigging out on diner food, maybe I would have fit into my dress. My husband's support and the anticipation of having my child is the only thing keeping me sane at the moment. But even though my husband supports me and says his mom is out of line and he does not want to talk to her anytime soon, I know Gloria is very manipulative, and I worry she will convince him to leave me. She tends to know what to say to sway him and pin him against me, but maybe I'm just being overly emotional due to pregnancy hormones. Also, I wish he would actually say something to his mom about how cruel she is being to me. I am not too sure what I'm hoping to get by posting this, but I guess I just want advice on what to do with someone like this. I am beyond stressed about this, and I can't stop replaying the night of the party in my head. The constant messages from Gloria are not helpful either. Any advice is welcomed and is certainly needed. Update 1. It has been a couple months since I posted here, and I want to thank you all for your advice. Things got a lot worse since posting, so I thought I would leave an update. I started therapy shortly after writing my post, as I needed someone to vent to, and my husband was not being very understanding. He tries to be supportive, but he is still loyal to his mom, and although I understand it must be hard for him, it does hurt. Gloria continued to be mean to me, and it feels good to have a therapist to talk to. Andrew mentioned I was in therapy to Gloria, and she laughed and said I must be crazy if I'm in therapy. My therapist has made me realize that Gloria is toxic and abusive towards me. My therapist is trying to help me cope with the stress that Gloria puts me under, but I do have a piece of bittersweet news regarding that. Due to the stress I have been under because of Gloria, I went into preterm labor and gave birth 6 weeks early. The baby and I are doing fine, but the baby had to stay in the NICU for nearly a month, which caused Andrew to miss work for that entire time. He had only planned to take a few days off for the birth of the baby, so we were struggling to make ends meet, and we needed money for our rent and baby formula. We were really in a bind and had absolutely no one to ask, so Andrew had to ask Gloria for money. Of course, I did not want to ask Gloria for money, but I also need to make sure my baby is fed and we have a roof over our heads. I really did not know what else to do. That night at the party, her comment about her having to always bail us out stands out and races in my mind constantly. And I feel so ashamed, but I had no other choice. Gloria gave the money to Andrew, but I did not even dare to ask him what she said when she handed it over to him. I am still upset about the last thing she said to me when she came to pick us up from the hospital a few days ago. You know, you probably wouldn't have had that baby early if you weren't living off diner food scraps. This comment made my blood boil. I spoke with my therapist today, and she said the cause of my preterm labor was probably actually due to the fact that I am under so much stress dealing with Gloria. She really does stress me out and make me so upset. Now that the baby is here, I want to try to focus on being a good mom to her and try to ignore Gloria. Since she was so early, she has some health issues which makes it really hard on Andrew and me. Our constant challenges make ignoring the ruminating thoughts about Gloria nearly impossible. She is the reason I am struggling. She is the reason I have a sick baby. I will try to update you guys after I have done some more therapy. Hopefully, things with Gloria will have improved if I can better myself. I just don't know anymore. Update 2. She tried to ruin my marriage. It has been a few months since my last update, and I have to say, the last few months have been hell. My therapy sessions quickly turned into couples counseling as my husband and I began arguing constantly over Gloria. In one of our sessions, Andrew finally admitted what has been going on, and I am telling you, Gloria is going to pay for what she has done. So I better start at the beginning. Shortly after we brought our baby girl home from the hospital, Andrew became distant and refused to change diapers, stopped helping around the house, and we argued nonstop. I spoke to my therapist about it, and she decided to have Andrew come in so we could sort out what was really going on. Our first session, we got nowhere because Andrew would not open up. However, during our second session, Andrew cried and began to spill out years of secrets he had been keeping regarding Gloria. For one, Gloria has been giving Andrew money the entire time we have been together. She even bought him the car he drives to work. Secondly, Gloria made an offer to Andrew shortly after the baby was born. The offer was that if he left me and the baby and proved it with signed divorce papers, she would buy him a house and give him a large sum of money. She promised him a fresh start and the ability to find a new wife that would be more suitable. Andrew admitted that the offer was very tempting, especially the money and home, as we have been struggling for so many years, but as he sat there in tears, he promised he would not take the deal. He also said the stress Gloria put him under to take the offer was why he had been so distant over the last while. My therapist told us that Gloria is clearly trying to pin us against one another and that she is very toxic. She also tried to get Gloria to come in with us for a session. Gloria declined by telling the therapist she is not a lunatic who needs therapy like me. Since the therapy session, Andrew has been very supportive and is helping me with the baby. I think the stress was also getting to us due to the fact that because of Gloria we had a premature baby, and my baby is sickly. We have a lot of doctor appointments for her, and she has a feeding tube with very expensive formula. Sometimes, I feel like Gloria has ruined my life and my baby's life. It is not fair for her or for Andrew or for me. This whole offer and the fact that Gloria made me have a premature baby, and all the rude comments, I just can't take it anymore. Michael and Deborah are getting married next month, and I plan to make that wedding the wedding of the century. I am going to embarrass Gloria so she gets what is coming to her. I just hope I have the courage to go through with my plan. Stay tuned. Update 3. Well, I have good news and bad news. I will start with the good news. Last week was Michael and Deborah's wedding night, and I had a somewhat wicked plan up my sleeve for Gloria to receive payback for everything she has put me through. You see, with Michael and Deborah both working for the hospital, their budget for the wedding was quite high, and Gloria, of course, matched that budget by buying a high-end, extravagant gown to wear to the wedding, which, by the way, cost more than a whole year's worth of my rent. Gloria had been going on and on about how darling her gown was and how special this wedding was and how it would be so much better than mine and Andrew's. She really knows how to get under my skin. We arrived at the wedding, and everyone was dressed to the nines, looking their absolute best. The venue for the wedding was very ritzy, and the ceremony, I hate to admit, was very well put together, with even the release of doves while Michael and Deborah sealed the deal with a kiss. Gloria's dress looked just as expensive as she claimed, and she wore it proudly around, trying to steal the spotlight from Deborah. Even though Deborah and I don't really see eye to eye, I thought Gloria's attention-grabbing attempt was so rude. She also commented on my dress, which was the same one I intended to wear to her grand party months ago, saying I looked frumpy. That was a tough pill to swallow, seeing as I just had a baby. It was time for payback. At the reception, I took my glass of red wine and walked over to Gloria, pretending I was going to strike up a conversation. As I walked toward her, I pretended to trip over my dress and spilled the dark red wine all over her lavender dress. She was livid. She told me I ruined her dress and mentioned that I must pay for it to be fixed or replaced. She also said I did it on purpose, and she simply could not spend the rest of the night in a wine-stained dress. I calmly told her I had brought a spare dress in case the baby had spit up on me, and it was in the car. I told her that since the dress was flowy and we were roughly the same size, she could wear that. Since Gloria had no other options, and she desperately wanted to attend the rest of the reception, she agreed to wear the dress. I met up with her in the bathroom of the venue with the dress, which was none other than my diner dress, the very dress she had made fun of at her grand party months ago when she told me it looked worse than her maid. I refuse to wear this, she protested. After nearly half an hour of convincing, Gloria wore the dress. She said she was only wearing it because she wanted to attend the reception and her dress was filthy. The reception went on, and it was speech time. Gloria went up to deliver her speech, and I snapped a photo of her giving her speech in my diner dress. I posted it to social media with a caption, "Who invited the help?" Gloria felt so embarrassed the whole reception, and she no longer paraded around trying to steal the spotlight from Deborah. In fact, Deborah came over to me near the end of the night and actually thanked me for allowing her to shine on her special night. Thank you to everyone who commented with words of support. This will be my last post. I really don't know where I will go from here, but it has been nice having people finally side with me about my crazy MIL. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My boyfriend asked my estranged parents for permission to marry me after I told him not to contact them after what they did to me. But he did it anyway. My BF and I have been together for about 2 years now. Well, he counts it as 2 years, but I only count about 1.5 years because we were just friends with benefits for the first part. Not that it really matters much for this situation, but it's just one of those little things we kind of joke argue about sometimes. He insists we were dating from the moment we first hooked up. I say it wasn't official until he actually asked me to be his girlfriend. He's my first serious relationship since my divorce. Yeah, I'm already divorced at 22. It's complicated, and I'll get to that. Things have been mostly good between us. He's super sweet most of the time, thoughtful, has a good job, and gets along with a few friends I have. He's traditional in a lot of ways, very family-oriented, wants to do things properly, calls his parents like twice a week, spends holidays with his family, that kind of stuff. I should mention that I don't speak to my parents. Haven't spoken to them since I was 16. I won't go into detail about why right now, but trust me when I say they're horrible people, and me never speaking to them again is them getting off lightly. Seriously, the shit they did was awful, and I've spent years trying to deal with it. I still have nightmares sometimes. When I was 16, I managed to get out by literally marrying my best friend. That's the legal age for marriage in our country. He knew what was happening, saw all the shit firsthand, and wanted to help me escape. We agreed that marriage was basically the only way I could legally get away without being dragged back home. I tried running away before, and that didn't end well at all. We stayed married through college for financial reasons. Easier to get loans and stuff that way, but divorced about 5 years later. We're still really good friends. I took his last name permanently to avoid any connection to my parents. Actually, he's the one who set me up with my current BF in the first place. When I first started dating my BF, I made it clear I didn't talk to my family. I didn't give details, just said we were estranged and I had my reasons. He seemed to accept that and never pushed for more information, which I appreciated. He would occasionally mention his own family gatherings and invite me, but never made a big deal when I changed the subject if he asked about my childhood or family stuff. I've wanted to tell him the full story for a while now, but it's really hard to talk about, like physically hard. Every time I tried, my throat would close up and I'd start panicking. My therapist, when I could still afford one, called it a trauma response. I'd planned to write it all down for him eventually, but kept putting it off. I guess I was scared of how he'd react or that he wouldn't believe me, or maybe I was just scared to relive it all again. So, fast forward to a few months ago. My mom somehow found me on Facebook. I deleted my old account years ago, but made a new one back in November and completely forgot about privacy settings. She messaged me right before Christmas asking if her and Dad could see me on Christmas Day. Just seeing her name pop up gave me a panic attack. I literally threw my phone across the room and had to take one of my anxiety pills to calm down. My BF was there when it happened and saw me freaking out. He picked up my phone and asked what was wrong. I was still pretty out of it, but managed to tell him it was my mother contacting me. This confused him since he knew I was estranged from my parents but didn't know details. I'd only ever said I don't speak to them and left it at that. He started asking questions, wanting to know why I was so upset over a simple message. I told him that she had found me somehow, but I wasn't going to respond. I explained that I have my reasons for not speaking to them, which I'm not ready to talk about yet, but I promised I'd tell him when I was ready. He seemed to understand and said that was good enough for him and he'd wait until I felt comfortable. I blocked her on Facebook, changed all my privacy settings, and tried to move on with my life. The whole thing did rattle me, though. For a couple weeks after, I was jumpy and had trouble sleeping. My BF noticed but didn't push me to talk about it. He was actually really supportive, made me tea when I couldn't sleep, held me through a couple nightmares, that kind of thing. It made me feel like maybe I could eventually tell him everything. My BF and I moved in together about 3 months ago. Things have been good for the most part. Last week, he mentioned our anniversary was coming up and asked if I wanted to do something special. I was thinking maybe just a nice dinner at home, but he insisted on taking me out somewhere fancy. I agreed because he seemed excited about it and I figured it would be nice to get dressed up for once. So, tonight was our second anniversary, or year and a half by my count, but whatever. He took me to this really fancy Italian place where we had our first official date. It's way out of our usual price range, but he said he'd been saving up for it. He was acting kind of nervous all night, checking his phone a lot, fidgeting with his silverware, that sort of thing. I thought maybe he was worried about the bill or something. Everything was going great until dessert came and he suddenly got down on one knee next to the table. People around us started noticing and a few pulled out their phones to record, which I hate, but whatever. I was shocked but happy for like 5 seconds until I actually processed what was happening and saw the ring. It was my nan's ring. I recognized it immediately. My nan was the only good person in my family, and she always told me she wanted me to have her ring someday, but she died when I was 14. Then the ring went to my parents. I haven't seen it in over 6 years. I felt like someone had dumped ice water over me. I just froze, staring at the ring while he was saying something about loving me and wanting to spend his life with me. I don't even remember his exact words because all I could think was, how the fuck does he have my nan's ring? I asked him where he got it. That's when he told me he'd gone to see my parents. Apparently, when my mom messaged me back in December, he secretly wrote down her name and contact info. Then a few days later, he contacted her, saying he wanted to ask for their permission to marry me. He'd gone to their house, met them both, and they gave him my nan's ring to propose with. He said it like he was proud of himself for being so traditional and thoughtful. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. He knew I was estranged from them. He knew I had serious reasons for not talking to them. He knew I'd promised to tell him when I was ready, but instead of respecting that, he went behind my back and fucking contacted them. I don't even remember exactly what I said. I know I was crying and probably yelling. People were staring. I told him no and that I never wanted to see that ring again. He kept trying to explain, but I couldn't even look at him. I left him there and took an Uber home. When I got back to our apartment, I started throwing his stuff into a suitcase. I wasn't even thinking clearly, just grabbing whatever I could find that belonged to him. He showed up about 20 minutes later trying to talk to me, saying I was overreacting and that he was just trying to do the right thing. I told him to take his shit and leave, that I needed space. I didn't officially break up with him, I don't think, but I told him to go stay with his sister for a while. He left eventually, still looking confused about what he'd done wrong. Now he won't stop calling and texting. His messages keep switching between apologizing, though it's clear he doesn't understand what he's apologizing for, and telling me I'm being irrational. He says it was just a surprise and I'm ruining a special moment. His sister, who I'm actually friends with, is also messaging me asking what happened. She says he showed up at her place crying with a suitcase and won't tell her what's going on except that I kicked him out. It's driving me crazy. I haven't responded to any of them because I don't know what to say. How do I explain this without having to tell the whole story? But maybe I have to tell the whole story now because of what he did. I knew he was traditional and family-oriented, and I get that asking the parents for permission is part of that for him. But he knew this was the one thing I asked him to respect about me. He knew how upset I got just from seeing a message from my mom. He promised he would wait until I was ready to tell him about my parents. And instead, he went behind my back. He betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. Through his messages and voicemails, I can tell my parents fed him some bullshit story about me. His texts mention how they're actually nice people and how they told him I ran away because they grounded me or some crap. He's talking about my dad walking me down the aisle someday and my parents meeting our future kids. It makes me physically sick to read that stuff. One of his messages said, "They just want to reconcile. They miss you and want to be part of your life again." Another said, "Everyone makes mistakes as parents. You can't hold a grudge forever." It's like he thinks he knows better than me about my own fucking life. The worst part is he told them all about my life now, where I work, what I do. He gave them information. I've spent years hiding from them. Though thankfully, he says he didn't give them my direct contact info or address. But still, they know what city I'm in now, what company I work for. They could find me if they wanted to. I feel so betrayed. He's known me for 2 years. He knows I'm not some unstable person who makes shit up. But after one meeting with my parents, he's convinced himself that I'm the one lying or exaggerating. I love him, or I did. I don't know anymore. Just this morning, I was thinking about our future together. And now everything feels tainted. I love my nan, and having her ring would have meant so much to me under different circumstances. But knowing how he got it just makes it feel wrong. I don't even know if I'm being clear here. My thoughts are all jumbled up. I've been typing and deleting and retyping for hours. I keep thinking maybe I'm overreacting, but then I remember what my parents did and I know I'm not. What he did was a massive violation of trust. Please help me figure this out. I need someone to put things in perspective or just give me some advice. Normally, I talk to a therapist about this kind of stuff, but it's the middle of the night and I haven't been to therapy in years. I know this is long and probably a mess, but I'm not thinking clearly right now. Thanks for reading if you made it this far. Any advice would be appreciated. Edit for clarification. Some people in the messages are assuming I never told him anything about my family situation. I did tell him I was estranged from them, that it was for serious reasons, and that I would explain when I was ready. He agreed to wait. That's what makes this so much worse. He knew enough to know it was a big deal. He just decided his tradition was more important than my boundaries. Edit 2. A lot of you are telling me I need to just tell him what happened. I know that. I've been trying. It's not as simple as just spitting it out. When you go through certain kinds of trauma, especially as a kid, talking about it can literally trigger panic attacks. I'm not being dramatic. I'm not withholding the info to be manipulative. I physically struggle to say the words. That's why I was writing it down for him instead. Edit 3. To those saying I'm overreacting, you have no idea what my parents did to me. If you knew, you wouldn't be saying that. And no, I'm not going to share those details here. The fact that I got married at 16 just to escape them should give you some idea of how bad it was. Update for people saying I need to communicate better. Yeah, no shit, I get that I should have told him everything sooner. Not being able to talk about trauma isn't an excuse, but it is a reason. Anyway, a lot has happened in the last few days, so here's what went down. After I made my post, I spent most of the night just crying and reading all his texts. I didn't reply to any of them because I knew I wasn't in the right headspace. The next morning, I called out sick from work because I still couldn't stop crying. My BF tried to come by the apartment, but I didn't answer the door. He left flowers and a note saying he was sorry for surprising me, but that he still didn't understand why I was so upset. I decided I had to tell him everything, if only so he'd understand why I reacted the way I did. I wasn't sure I could do it face to face without breaking down. So, I thought about having someone else there for support. I called my ex-husband, the one who helped me escape, because he was there for everything and knows the whole story. I figured if I froze up, he could help explain. When I called him, I found out something interesting. My ex told me that my BF had actually asked him about my parents about 6 months ago. My ex had told him it was up to me to tell him when I was ready, and my BF had said he understood and would wait. My ex didn't tell me about this conversation at the time because I just asked my BF to move in with me, and he didn't want to ruin that for me. He apologized for keeping it from me and promised not to do that again. This made me even more upset because it meant my BF had been thinking about contacting my parents for months. It wasn't just an impulsive decision after seeing that Facebook message. He'd been planning this behind my back for a long time. My ex came over the next day and we talked for hours about what to do. He was pretty pissed at my BF and offered to just tell him to fuck off permanently on my behalf, but I said no. I figured my BF deserved to at least know why I was so upset, even if we couldn't fix things between us. So, I asked my ex to stay while I talked to my BF and he agreed. I texted my BF asking him to come over so we could talk. He replied almost immediately saying he'd be right there. When he arrived and saw my ex sitting in our living room, he got really pissy and asked why he was there. I explained he was there for emotional support while I told him what happened with my parents. My BF wasn't happy about it, but sat down anyway, though he kept glaring at my ex like he was the problem. I took a deep breath and started by saying exactly what my parents did to me in the bluntest way possible. I won't write it here, but trust me, it was bad. Before I could even finish explaining everything, my BF interrupted me saying, "They told me you'd lie." He actually fucking said that to my face after I just opened up about the worst experiences of my life. My ex told him to watch how he was speaking to me, and my BF said he'd speak to me however he wants and told my ex to stay out of it. Then he turned back to me and told me he knew the truth and implied I should be grateful he stayed with me despite my issues. According to him, my parents said I was mentally unstable, refused to see doctors, and got caught breaking the law as a teenager. They supposedly grounded me and I ran away rather than face consequences. This complete bullshit. I've never been arrested or in legal trouble in my life. I've been in therapy multiple times when I could afford it. My parents were the unstable ones. But he was so convinced by whatever story they fed him that he wouldn't even listen to me. I started crying again, and my ex stood up and told my BF he had 30 minutes to pack his stuff and get out. And if he said another word to me, his time went to 0. My BF looked like he was going to argue, but then just stormed off to the bedroom and started throwing his stuff in bags. He packed up and left without another word to either of us. After he left, my ex stayed with me for a while to make sure I was okay. I was a mess. Obviously, I thought this person loved me and would believe me, but instead he chose to believe my abusers after one meeting with them. My BF, ex-BFF now, I guess, texted me later that night saying he was sorry for how things went down, but he still thinks I'm not remembering things correctly about my childhood. He said my parents seemed genuinely nice and concerned about me and that I should consider healing the relationship with them. He actually had the nerve to say he was just trying to help me by bringing them back into my life. I didn't respond. The next day, I checked my work voicemail and found out my mother had called there asking for me. Apparently, they tried to come by, but I wasn't in. My boss thought it was weird, but took a message. This means my ex-B definitely gave them enough information to find my workplace. So, to recap, my ex-B knew I haven't spoken to my parents in a decade, that I got married at 16 to escape them, that I still have nightmares about what happened, and that I would tell him when I was ready. Despite all that, within days of my mom contacting me, he sought them out and asked permission to marry me based on his gut feeling about them from a few text messages. He believed their lies about me over everything he knew about me from our relationship. And he gave them information about me, including my full name, job, and workplace. I'm scared now that they're going to keep trying to find me, especially since my ex-B has probably told them we broke up. My ex-husband has offered to stay with me for a while just in case, which I've accepted. I'm looking into whether I have grounds for a restraining order, and I'm also thinking about moving and changing jobs. I just started to feel settled and safe in this city, and now that's all ruined. My ex-BS sister reached out to me, too. She was horrified when I told her what happened. Not the details about my parents, just that he went behind my back to meet them when he knew I was estranged for serious reasons. She apologized for her brother and said she would have never thought he'd do something like that. She offered to help if I need anything, which was nice of her. I've been staying home from work for a few days, just trying to process everything. My boss thinks I have the flu. I need to go back tomorrow, though, because I can't afford to lose my job on top of everything else. I'm going to talk to HR about not accepting calls from my parents and maybe changing my extension. I still can't believe this happened. I trusted him. I loved him. I thought he loved me, too. But when it came down to it, he didn't respect me enough to believe me about my own life. He thought he knew better than me about my own family. He betrayed me in the worst possible way. Sorry if this all sounds dramatic. It's been a really fucking awful week. I just wanted to update because so many people asked for one. I guess the situation is resolved and that we're definitely broken up, but now I have new problems to deal with. I'll update again if anything major happens, but for now, I'm just trying to figure out what to do next. Thanks again to everyone who offered advice. Edit to the update. A few people asked about the ring. He still has it as far as I know. At this point, I don't even want it anymore. It would just remind me of all this. I know my nan wanted me to have it, but I think she'd understand. Edit 2. To the people sending me DMs asking for details about what my parents did. Please stop. I'm not going to share that with strangers on the internet. It's traumatic and private. The point is that it was bad enough to warrant cutting contact permanently. Edit 3. My ex-husband is just a friend now, so stop with the comments suggesting something is going on between us. He's literally engaged to someone else. He's helping because he's a good person who went through all this with me the first time around. Not everyone has ulterior motives. Edit 4. Some have asked why I don't just move cities again. It's not that simple. I have a decent job here. I can't afford to just pick up and leave. Finding a new job, new apartment, etc. takes time and money. I'm figuring it out, but it's not an overnight thing. Final edit for now. I have an appointment with a lawyer next week about the restraining order situation. I'll update if there's any significant development, but I'm going to step away from this post for my own mental health. Thanks for all the support and advice. Now on to the next story. Story 6. proposed to my girlfriend last week, but the next day her family handed me a list of things to pay for. When I refused, she called me selfish, and her dad threatened to beat me up. Up until last week, I was engaged to my fiancée, Tina, and we were planning to get married in the next few months. However, things took an unexpected turn, leading me to break off our engagement after I was basically threatened and bullied by her family. To provide some context, Tina and I come from very different family backgrounds. I am an only child, and both my parents are in research. Growing up in a stable and supportive environment, I had the privilege of focusing on my education and personal development. My parents worked hard to give me a comfortable life, emphasizing the importance of values, independence, and mutual respect. Tina, on the other hand, comes from a lower-income family and is the eldest of 6 siblings. Her childhood was marked by challenges that I cannot even imagine. Her parents always struggled with various addiction issues, which put a strain on the family's finances and stability. As Tina and her siblings grew older, her parents shifted much of their financial burden onto the children, expecting them to provide for the family. When I first started dating Tina, she was very upfront about her family situation. She explained how she sends money back to her family every month to help them with their expenses since her parents didn't have a stable job. Beyond that, she also sends money to her siblings whenever they need something, which, as I quickly learned, was quite often. Her siblings would constantly call her for various things, and she would have to send money. Whenever Tina hesitated or refused to meet their demands, her family would guilt-trip her into giving them what they wanted. They would tell her how, as the oldest, it was her responsibility to take care of them and that family is family, so she had to be there for them. For me, this was entirely new territory. My parents had never expected me to pay for them, so coming from a background where financial independence and boundaries were the norm, I often encouraged Tina to consider cutting ties or setting firm boundaries with her family. I genuinely believed that allowing her family to constantly take advantage of her was unhealthy. However, Tina always made it clear that this was her business and something I shouldn't interfere with. Whenever the topic came up, she would push back, sometimes even accusing me of being inconsiderate. She would argue that I didn't understand the importance of family obligations because I'm an only child and I've never experienced the kind of responsibilities that come with having siblings. She often implied that my perspective lacked generosity or empathy. So, after multiple times of hearing this, I decided to step back and respect her wishes. After all, it was her money, and she was entitled to make her own choice about how she spent it. I didn't want to push her or strain our relationship over this issue, even though I could see how much her family's constant demands were draining her emotionally and financially. It became a topic I avoided bringing up at all. Instead, I tried to be a good and supportive partner to her. During the 2.5 years that Tina and I dated, I made it a point to support her in every way I could. Financially, I always took care of her, not because she asked me to or expected it, but because I wanted to. I believed in being a gentleman and providing for her as a way of showing my love and appreciation. Whether it was her nail and hair appointments, our date nights, or even vacations, I was always the one covering the costs without hesitation or complaint. I genuinely wanted to make her feel cared for and valued. It was my way of showing that I was invested in her and our relationship. This month, after 2.5 years together, I finally popped the question and proposed to Tina. I thought our relationship was going great and we needed to take the next step. When she said yes, I was on cloud 9, excited for what lay ahead and felt certain that we were entering one of the happiest chapters of our lives. The very next day, Tina's parents invited us to lunch at their home. I assumed it was their way of congratulating us on our engagement and welcoming me officially into their family. Wanting to show respect and appreciation, I didn't think twice about accepting their invitation. However, when we arrived, I quickly realized that this gathering was far from a celebratory occasion. As we sat down at the table, Tina's family wasted no time getting to the point. They told me how thrilled they were that I was going to be Tina's soon-to-be husband, but they made it clear that in order to join their family, I had to prove my worth to them as well. I asked them what exactly they meant by proving my worth. Was it not enough that I loved Tina and was committed to building a future together? Did I really have to jump through hoops to try to win their approval as well? This is when her father handed me a to-do list, as he called it. In the list were various things that he expected me to start paying off for them as a way to show him that I was really ready to be his son-in-law. Among the demands were paying off the family's mortgage, covering an outstanding education loan, renovating their kitchen, buying them a new car, and more. At first, I thought he and the rest of the family might be joking with me. Maybe this was a prank and they wanted to pull my leg, but their serious expressions and unwavering tone quickly dispelled any notion of humor. I glanced at Tina, hoping for an explanation or at least some reassurance that this was all a misunderstanding. But to my shock, she sat silently, staring down at her lap, avoiding eye contact with me. Her silence felt deafening and unnerving, leaving me feeling blindsided and unsupported. I looked at the list again, and these weren't small gestures or reasonable requests. They were massive financial undertakings, completely outside the realm of what anyone could reasonably ask of a future son-in-law. I was utterly taken aback. It was one thing to know that Tina's family relied heavily on her for financial support. I'd long accepted that this was part of her life, but to demand that I assume this responsibility as a prerequisite for marrying Tina was beyond anything I could have imagined. Trying to make sense of the situation, I turned to Tina and asked what her family meant by these demands. Instead of answering, she remained silent, and her father took the opportunity to speak for her. He explained that since Tina was their oldest child, she had always been the primary supporter of the family, helping them financially as much as she could over the years. Now, with Tina being the first of their children to get married, he claimed it was only logical and fair that I, as her partner, would take on at least half of the family's financial burden. Also, he went on to argue that I was financially well off, so fulfilling their requests shouldn't be a big deal for me anyway. His casual tone made it sound like he was talking about something as trivial as borrowing a cup of sugar rather than major financial matters like paying off their mortgage, loans, or other significant expenses. I scoffed at his casual entitlement to my money and asked him outright if he had lost his mind. I told him in no uncertain terms that there was absolutely no way I would be paying for any of their debts or expenses. Yes, I was getting married to Tina, but I wasn't marrying them. I wasn't about to take on financial responsibilities for people I barely knew or liked. I couldn't fathom how they even thought this was an acceptable thing to demand. I turned to Tina again, desperate for her support or at least an explanation. I asked her why she was staying silent while her family was making such unreasonable requests, especially when it was about our future and my money. Finally, she spoke, but what she said only made things worse. Tina told me that she didn't think her family's demands were unreasonable. She said that as her man, it was my duty to take on some of her responsibilities at least, and that this was the purpose of marriage, to share responsibilities. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I was completely surprised by her answer. She had never discussed this with me before. Before I could argue with her, one of Tina's sisters chimed in, backing her up. She pointed out how unfair it was that Tina and I enjoyed such a good lifestyle while the rest of the siblings struggled to pay bills and lived in poverty. Tina's brother also joined in, adding his opinion. With a smug confidence, he declared that since Tina had been sending them money every month without question, it was now my turn to take over as her husband and help them. No questions asked. According to him, only a real man would have no problem doing this. At this point, I honestly felt like I was losing my mind. I pointed out the irony to Tina's brother. He was a man too, so why was he expecting me to take care of their family finances instead of stepping up himself? Her brother seemed offended by this. I then turned to Tina and asked her directly if this was her intention all along. Did she really plan on letting me take care of her family after marriage? Did she expect me to pay off their bills and debts? Because if she had told me about it earlier in our relationship, I would have made it clear right then and there that my answer was a firm no. Frustrated, I pushed further and asked why she had never discussed this with me before. To me, this entire situation felt deceitful and manipulative. Not once had she mentioned this plan, which apparently she and her family had for me, throughout the entire time we dated. I told her bluntly that this was exactly how gold diggers operate. They use their partners for financial gain while keeping them in the dark until it's too late. The moment I uttered the word gold digger, the room erupted into chaos. Tina's parents began yelling at me, claiming I was going too far and that I was being disrespectful to her. Her father repeated that asking for money from their future son-in-law was perfectly normal and not a big deal. Her mother chimed in, insisting that this was a family obligation, and that I needed to start acting like a part of the family if I wanted to marry Tina. Tina, visibly embarrassed but still defensive, argued that this was something any woman would expect from her partner. She doubled down on the idea that I was being selfish, bringing up the fact that I'm an only child and don't understand what it means to have a large family. She even tried to reassure me that all I had to do was pay off everything on the to-do list and promised that her family wouldn't ask me for anything more in the future. But as I looked around the room at her family's faces, all I saw were the greedy, calculating faces of people who knew exactly what they were doing. They were jackals, and I felt like a complete fool for not seeing it sooner. For years, I had trusted Tina and overlooked the red flags, thinking it would never affect me. But this lunch had made everything crystal clear. Her words were the final nail in the coffin. They revealed a sense of entitlement that I simply couldn't overlook. As much as I had cared for Tina, I knew then that I could never marry someone who viewed my financial stability as a resource to be drained for the sake of her family. I shook my head, feeling a mix of disbelief and clarity. I then turned to Tina and told her if she wanted to call me selfish just because I didn't want my bank account to be drained, then she was right. I was selfish. I was selfish enough to not let them convince me to be their meal ticket for the rest of my life. The fact that she supported their demands only proved to me that she had always harbored this ill intention and had probably been hiding her true self from me the entire time. I asked her outright if she really saw me as a naive person who she could just marry and manipulate into taking on her family's burdens. Hearing this, Tina's face flushed red, and she began stammering, denying everything I had said. She insisted that I had significant savings and came from a stable financial situation, while she and her family had nothing. Tina argued that it wasn't even that unfair for her or her family to ask me for financial help. In her mind, the fact that I had so much meant I should easily be able to help them out without hesitation. At this point, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to regain some composure. I had always prided myself on being an intelligent and discerning person, but in this moment, I realized just how thoroughly I had been played by this woman I once thought I knew. It was a sobering realization. This wasn't about love or partnership anymore. This was about what I could provide and how much she and her family could extract from me. When I opened my eyes, I looked directly at Tina and told her I wasn't going to argue with her anymore. Clearly, she expected me to step up and provide for her family, but I couldn't do that. And since she needed a man who would, there was no point in us staying together anymore. I made it clear that we were done and that our engagement was officially off. Tina looked at me in horror as I told her that she needed to find someone else who would be willing to be her family's scapegoat, or better yet, their golden goose. Then I asked for the engagement ring back. Tina had insisted I buy her a large diamond ring, and I had bought it because I wanted to make her happy. However, if there wasn't going to be a wedding, I saw no reason for her to keep it. This is when Tina and her family immediately started arguing with me. Her sisters began shouting, accusing me of breaking my promise to marry her. Tina herself, now teary-eyed, kept pleading with me to take some time to think things through, saying that I was making a rash and overly harsh decision by breaking off things with her. She assured me that if I just calmed down, I would realize that her family's requests weren't unreasonable and that we could still work things out. Her father, on the other hand, became more confrontational. He angrily declared that I had no right to break his daughter's heart after she had dedicated 2 vital years of her life to me. He acted as though I was some villain for walking away, ignoring the fact that their behavior was the root of the problem. He even suggested that after everything Tina had sacrificed for our relationship, I had no choice but to keep my word and marry her. Otherwise, he and his sons would beat me up. Despite the threats, the shouting, and the pleas, I stood my ground. I told them I didn't care what they threatened me with because there was nothing in this world that would make me marry Tina after what I had just found out. I had made my decision, and no amount of guilt-tripping or intimidation was going to change it. I informed them that if they so much as touched a hair on my head, I would call the police on them and sue them with every penny I had. That shut Tina's dad up properly. Meanwhile, Tina continued to cry and refused to give me the ring back. I didn't want to argue with her further and left without saying another word. I felt completely drained emotionally, mentally, and even physically. I couldn't bear to be around Tina and her family any longer. Since then, the aftermath of our breakup has been complicated. Tina and I have a lot of mutual friends, and everyone's opinions have been sharply divided. A majority of them seem to side with me. They agree that Tina's behavior was deceitful and opportunistic, and they have openly labeled her a gold digger. They believe she knowingly kept her family's expectations hidden from me until I was fully committed to the engagement, and they agree that I had every right to walk away from her. However, there are a few, mostly some of the women, who feel differently. They've expressed that, in their opinion, I should have at least considered helping Tina's family out financially in some small way. They argue that supporting your partner's family is just a part of being in a relationship, especially when one partner comes from a less privileged background. They believe I was too quick to dismiss the idea entirely and that I could have tried to find a compromise, even if it didn't mean fulfilling all of her family's outrageous demands. So, I am on to know if I really did a bad thing by breaking up with Tina. Update 1. Hello guys. I have just found out that Tina has been going around telling people that I'm not man enough, because I refused to take up any of her family's burdens and left her like a coward. She's even gone as far as to claim that any woman who marries me in the future is destined to have a horrible life because, according to her, I'm selfish and only think about myself. These accusations are not only untrue but deeply unfair, considering how much I gave to our relationship and how I treated her with love and respect up until the moment her family crossed the line. For those who are asking how I could have been with someone like Tina without realizing her true nature, believe me, I had no idea. Do you really think I would have spent over 2 years of my life with a woman who expected me to fund not only her lifestyle but also her family's? Absolutely not. If I had seen any signs of this behavior earlier, I would have ended things immediately. The truth is, Tina was the one who pursued me from the very beginning. She's the one who approached me, asked me out on our first date, and always seemed completely captivated by me. She always portrayed herself as an independent woman who was simply weighed down by her family. That's why I stayed with her, invested in her, and gave her everything she wanted without hesitation. I never questioned her intentions because for 2.5 years, there was no reason to. However, overnight everything changed the moment her family laid out their outrageous demands and she sided with them. That's when her true colors came to light, and I saw the side of her that I hadn't seen before. The entitlement, the lack of boundaries, and the willingness to justify their behavior as acceptable. It wasn't until that moment that I realized how drastically our values and priorities differed. To those who believe I should have handled things differently and not walked away from her, I can only say this. I know my worth and I know what I bring to a relationship. I'm not a selfish person. I'm a loving, generous partner. But there's a fine line between being supportive and being exploited. Marriage is about building a life together, not about one partner draining the other financially or emotionally. Tina and her family crossed that line, and I did what anyone with self-respect would do. I walked away. I absolutely agree with several commentators who have pointed out how lucky I am to have discovered Tina and her family's true intentions before we got married. I can't even begin to imagine how much worse it would have been if this had all come out after we tied the knot. Looking back, I think the reason they thought they could spring these demands on me and expect me to simply go along with them is because up until now, I've always been the kind of person who has supported Tina through thick and thin. I am also usually a quiet person who avoids conflict. For instance, whenever I used to meet Tina's family for lunch at a restaurant, I always picked up the tab. When it was Tina's birthday, I went all out and paid for everything to make her day special. Even when Tina went out with her siblings to see a movie, grab dinner, or do anything else, I was the one who would always book their tickets, pay for their cab fares, and cover other expenses. I did those things out of love for Tina. I thought I was doing something nice for the people she cared about. But now, in hindsight, I can see how they may have interpreted my kindness as a weakness to be exploited. To them, I must have seemed like a bottomless ATM, someone they could slowly start taking more and more from without question. I think they assumed that since we were now officially engaged and about to get married, I would naturally accept their financial expectations as a part of their family. What they didn't expect, obviously, was for me to stand up for myself and say no. Their aggressive reactions to my refusal, Tina's father's threats, her siblings yelling, and even Tina herself trying to guilt me, only confirmed that they fully intended to manipulate me into fulfilling their demands. They never imagined I'd push back or see through their behavior, and that's why they lashed out the way they did. While this entire experience has been difficult, it's also been an important wake-up call for me. I will never let another person take advantage of me this way ever again in the future. Luckily, Tina and I were never living together. She lives in an apartment with some roommates, and we were planning to move in together soon after the engagement. Now, of course, all those plans have been completely derailed by everything that happened with her family. I've packed up whatever things of hers I could find around my apartment. Clothes, personal items, small things she left behind, and I'm going to mail them back to her as I don't want to see her ever again. Update 2. A lot of people have been telling me to reach out to Tina and get the engagement ring back from her, insisting it's mine and I should take action to reclaim it. But honestly, up until now, I didn't want to be bothered by her or her drama anymore. I thought, let her keep it if it means she'll leave me alone. It was one less thing I had to deal with anyway, and I figured it wasn't worth dragging myself through more of that mess just to get a piece of jewelry back. However, tonight my ex showed up at my doorstep, drunk and yelling at me. She was pounding on my door, demanding that I open it and talk to her. Of course, I wasn't about to do that. I wasn't going to let her in, especially after everything that had happened. I have a Ring camera, so I figured I'd ask her what she was doing there and why she was making a scene outside my place, causing a disturbance for my neighbors. Tina yelled at me about how much she missed me and how she wanted us to get back together. She said I had no right to just leave her after she had made up her mind to marry me. She insisted that I had insulted her and her family over something as silly as money and that I should have just accepted their demands. Tina even went so far as to tell me that money would come and go, but that the love we had for each other was apparently what mattered the most. However, I could hear how manipulative she sounded, how she was trying to justify everything, trying to make me feel guilty for something that, in her eyes, was no big deal. I couldn't believe how far she had fallen in my eyes, how she could be so blinded by her own sense of entitlement. The feelings I once had, love, affection, trust, were gone. All that was left was pity and disgust for her. I told Tina, as calmly as I could, that I had made it very clear that we were done. I had spent so much time and effort supporting her and her family out of love and courtesy, but expecting me to be their cash cow forever was something I never signed up for. I had always been patient and understanding towards her family, but this was crossing a line I couldn't ignore. Tina responded by arguing that this was just how all marriages worked and that I needed to educate myself on how these things went. I snapped back at her, telling her I was really tired of her generalizing and assuming that this kind of behavior was acceptable. It was irrational of her to expect her partner to shoulder the financial burden of her entire family. I told her that up until now, I had genuinely felt sad for her. I understood the pressure she felt to support her family, and that's why I always paid for her things throughout our relationship. But now I realized that she was just like them, using me for money. She had probably waited for me to propose and marry her so she could then force me to take on her place. Hearing this, Tina looked offended, but I could see the truth in my words hitting her. She began arguing with me more, but I was done. I told her she needed to leave my property immediately and that if she didn't, I would call the police. At that point, Tina began to beg me to unblock her on my phone at least, but I refused. I told her that I didn't want to speak to her ever again. I had no more patience for her manipulation or games. In the end, she stormed off after kicking and cursing at me through the door. Update 3. It's been 4 months since my last update. There's been a lot to process, but I've finally moved out of my old place. Right now, I'm staying with my parents while I search for a new home. It wasn't an easy decision, but I didn't have much of a choice. You see, Tina and her family have continued to harass me all this time, and it was making living at my old place unbearable. I had to get out of there for my own peace of mind. Over the past few months, I've also had to distance myself from some friends who are still siding with Tina. They've been pleading with me to give her another chance, but it's clear they don't understand the gravity of what she and her family tried to do to me. I've had to go to the extreme of changing my phone number and email address, as Tina kept reaching out from various numbers trying to get in contact, and I couldn't keep dealing with the constant stress. After talking things through with my dad, we're now planning to get a restraining order soon. I don't want Tina to ever show up at my new place or even at my parents' place drunk and yelling at me again. Initially, I thought she was just having a hard time accepting our breakup, but I don't want to tolerate that kind of behavior anymore. It's sad that things have come to this, but I have to protect myself. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Parents stole my college fund for my golden child sister, which Grandma left for us, because they want my sister to use it to lift her spirits after she didn't get into her dream college. I, 17F, recently had an incident with my parents where they decided to give my share of the inheritance money for college, which my grandma left me before passing away, to my golden elder sister because they wanted her to start a business after not getting into her dream college for the second consecutive year. I was only close to my grandmother, and my family and my parents trying to steal what she had given me due to their favoritism didn't sit right with me. So, I decided to plan my revenge by exposing their hypocrisy in front of everyone, but now I'm being called names for it. I'll begin with my dynamic with my grandma and my family. I was born into a well-to-do family which consisted of my parents, my grandma, and my older sister, Alice, 19F. My parents, although doing extremely well financially, never failed to remind us of their hardships since we were immigrants. Almost every conversation at our dinner table was about this, and as a 10-year-old, it didn't make much sense to me and was tormenting. There were times when I deliberately loaded up on snacks and skipped dinner just to avoid this conversation, or rather, lecture. I tried to talk to my sister about this in order to maybe bond over it, but she always shrugged me off, asking me to mind my own business. The only one in the family who shared my sentiment back then was my grandmother. She was a rather cool granny, allowing us to have snacks, making our favorite dishes, and even taking the wrath of my parents if Alice or I did anything wrong. Alice never liked me, didn't acknowledge my existence at school, and bullied me into doing her chores at home with my parents not doing anything about it. So, it was safe to say it was just me and Grandma in my little world. Things were going well for me until the beginning of high school. Alice, being older, was about to complete hers and had started eyeing a few colleges. My grandma, on the other hand, was getting sicker with each passing day. My parents tried everything to make things better, but they only got worse, which ended up with Grandma being hospitalized. I was not able to focus on anything as my only support system was now in danger. My grandma got better soon, but the doctor said we needed someone to take care of her at all times. I immediately offered to do that, but my parents asked me to stay out of it. Although they earned well enough, they couldn't afford a private nurse, so they decided to put Grandma in a senior home. I was heartbroken by this and did everything in my power, from pleading to throwing tantrums, to get my parents to change this decision, but nothing helped. Ultimately, my grandma talked to me and said that the only way she'd be okay was by not being a burden to me or my parents anymore. We both shed a few tears as I packed her stuff from our house. My parents looked oddly relieved after dropping my grandma off. I was absolutely done with them and decided to not engage with anyone at home anymore. I visited Grandma every day and stayed out most of the time, hanging out either at my friends' houses or studying at the library, finishing my dinner and going to bed before my parents came back from work. It was made clear to me on various occasions that Alice was the golden child and I should be looking up to her, which I obviously ignored. The next year was particularly hard for all of us. My grandma was getting sicker at the senior home, my mom was fired from her job, and Alice, well, she fell into the bad company of her peers and totally derailed from academics or even co-curriculars, making it hard for her to get into even a half-decent college. I, on the other hand, was thriving. My frequent visits to the library and a good peer support group paid off, and I ended up doing pretty well academically. I had selected my dream college and was sure that I was going to get in the next year. My mom, trying to be productive at home, made Alice her new project and started taking care of her academics and basically her whole life. Alice was not liking this controlling behavior, so loud screaming noises from our house were now common. Since one source of income was reduced, my parents decided it was best to bring Grandma back home as they couldn't afford the senior home anymore. No one could have been happier than me. We brought Grandma home the next day, but the ambience of our house didn't sit well with her. She got extremely sick one night, and I decided to take care of her. That night, I saw a different side of her. She wasn't just my granny but also her own person, and she had achieved a lot more than what I expected. She fell asleep telling me her tales from her time and gave me her gold necklace for being such a wonderful human. The next day, my father told us that she had passed away in her sleep. A wake was organized for her a few days after her death. I was in absolute shambles, and her passing did take a toll on me, as I fell ill during that time too. My mother took care of me for a while, and then I was left on my own. I gathered whatever energy I had in me to attend her wake and made sure to wear the necklace she gave me. I was standing next to Alice at the church, who fake cried at every opportunity she got, portraying herself as holier than thou. I quietly attended to everyone but was done standing once Alice whispered to me that she was glad Grandma was gone. As I was about to excuse myself, I was suddenly pulled back by Alice. She tightly held my wrist and asked me where I got the necklace I was wearing. I did not want to tell her, so I asked her to mind her own business and leave me alone. She ignored what I said and pulled the necklace in an attempt to take it. My dad saw this and asked us both to step out. He asked why we were creating a scene, and Alice immediately said that I had a necklace on which she didn't get. My dad took one look at it and realized it was his mother's, but instead of defending me, he started inquiring if I had stolen that necklace from my grandmother. I was already unwell and this shocked me even more. Irritated, I replied that she had given it to me before passing away and that he had no right to call me a thief without any proof. Alice interrupted and said she should get the necklace because she was the elder one. My dad turned to me and asked me to return the necklace to him. I couldn't believe he was serious and asked him to repeat himself, to which he replied that he didn't have the whole day to argue with me and I should return it to him immediately. There was no way I was going to give my grandma's last possession to him, so I angrily said, "No." At this point, people had started to look at us. My dad, in a very hushed but stern tone, told me to either give him the necklace or leave the wake. I chose the latter and walked back home right then. Once they reached home from the wake, a screaming match ensued between me and the rest of my family. They called me names, assassinated my character, and went as far as to say that they wished I wasn't born. It hurt a lot, but I fought for myself and made it very clear that I was eagerly waiting for the day to leave their house and them forever. Since that day, I cut off all contact with my family. I got a part-time job and started paying for my share of the groceries and the rent. Although we lived under the same roof, it felt like I was renting a room in their house. Not being involved with them agreed with me as I got back on track pretty quickly. Alice, on the other hand, even with my mother's help, wasn't able to score well and decided to take a gap year to travel and try again next year for her preferred university. I was surprised that my parents agreed to this because it seemed like they had been short on money for the last few months. One night, as I was going to the kitchen to get some water, I secretly heard my parents talk about the college funds my grandma had left for both me and Alice, which were in their possession until we turned 18. This college fund was being used as Alice's travel money for the gap year. I was glad I overheard this because there was a chance I wouldn't have received it at all. Being free from the financial burden of college gave me a lot of space to improve even further on my academics and co-curriculars, which I did. I was also selected as valedictorian for my graduation. My parents did show up at the graduation and acted like I was their golden child in front of everyone. I put on a mask and pretended with them for the day. The next week, I got an email from my preferred university stating that I had been accepted as a student to the course I desired. I had a long cry in my room for an hour before I went down to tell my parents about it. As soon as I reached downstairs, I saw that Alice was back from her voyage and was crying. All I had heard about her when she was away was that she had gotten into drugs and was also facing some mental issues. Seeing everyone so stressed, I realized something bad had happened, but I decided to tell them about my acceptance letter first. As soon as I was about to speak, my dad stopped me and asked me to read the room before I said anything. I asked him what was going on, and he told me that Alice had been rejected from her preferred university this year as well. I thought it wouldn't be okay to brag about my accomplishment at that point, so I went back to my room. A week passed, and I had to submit the fee to confirm my admission, so I decided to go and talk to my parents about the college fund Grandma left me. They asked me to sit down. Once they heard about the college fund, they congratulated me on getting into my university of choice but didn't know what fund I was talking about. I said I heard them one night talking about it, and if they were going to lie so blatantly, I might as well seek the help of a lawyer to get my inheritance. They were taken by surprise at this and told me that they had a good reason for not telling me about the college fund. They said that since Alice was the golden child, they expected her to get in this year and hence had spent her college fund on her recreational activities. They didn't expect much from me and didn't think I would need a college fund. But now that Alice was again not selected for college, they were planning to gift her a place and funds to start her new business for my college fund. It was unbelievable how biased my parents were acting toward my sister. I hadn't felt that alone in a very long time as I did at that moment. They could see how disappointed I was in them, and to cover their guilt, they suggested that since I was a good student, I could easily get in on a scholarship if I tried. I still couldn't believe their audacity, but I very calmly asked them to think about it again and went back to my room. Before I could open the door to my room, I could hear Alice coming towards me. I turned around and asked what she wanted. She was clearly high and began screaming at me about why I was trying to steal her money. I told her that it wasn't her money and that maybe she should live in the real world a little more. She got extremely pissed at that and pushed me against the wall. Hearing the thud, my parents came running to find me resisting Alice's attempt to hurt me. My father pulled Alice back, whereas my mother asked me if I was okay. As soon as I got up, they both took Alice to her room to talk to her and left me in the hallway with no first aid or anything. I got myself up somehow and decided to go stay at a friend's house for a safe space. The next morning, I went back home and asked my parents if they had made a final decision. They said they had, and nothing had changed since the last time we talked, and now they were more sure about giving Alice the money because she needed it more. Instead, now they had decided to throw Alice and me a joint party for my graduation and her new business, basically a way for her to build connections. I didn't expect anything better from them, but I had a plan in mind to make this party unforgettable. I told my parents I was okay with their plan and would like to contribute by making a business introduction video for Alice. The very next moment, I found myself in Alice's room asking her what her plan for this new business was. Her incompetence was visible in the way she described it, but I somehow made it bearable for a presentation, which she approved of. There was no thank you from her, obviously, just congratulations for making myself of some use. A week later, it was time for the big video at the party. My dad had gotten big screens and everything. A few people congratulated me on my admission, but my dad interrupted and asked everyone to pay attention to the big screen, gesturing at me to play the video. The video began with a nice message about Alice and then played the video of her talking about her new business, which made it very clear how sure she was of the whole plan. Then, it led to a video in which I was talking to everyone, explaining how my family had been biased towards me, spending my college fund on Alice's business, which she had no idea about. On seeing this, my dad ran towards the controls of the projector to stop it, but I stood in between, letting the video play the audio recording I had secretly taped of my parents' reasons for stealing my inheritance in the end. I called my family a bunch of entitled thieves, and the screen went blank. Everyone was now looking at me. My father and my sister Alice immediately started to cry, with my mother escorting her inside the house. My dad stood there silently until everyone realized the awkwardness of the situation and left. I couldn't have been prouder of myself and went back to my room to pack my bags. I had no plans of staying with him anymore. Before I could leave, I got a call from my cousin telling me how my father had made a post on my wall manipulating the whole situation and calling me the reason for his mother's death. My phone was bombarded with constant messages from all my old relatives calling me an unchecked, rebellious child, and this has me reconsidering if I went too far with Alice's big reveal at the party. So, am I the jerk for revealing the truth about my family of how they stole my college funds for my entitled sister? Update 1. I read the comments and appreciate the advice. Here are some questions I'd like to answer before going ahead. I am currently 17 years old and will be turning 18 in 2 months when I can have direct access to the inheritance my grandma left me. A lot of you mentioned how I could contact CPS for the neglect I faced from my parents. The thing is, I don't wish to because the only way they've been absent is emotionally, for the most part. Other than this college fund, it was my parents who provided for me until I was ready to earn on my own, which was also not forced upon me. They might not have been very good parents to me, but I still believe that they're not evil. Regarding them being blind to Alice's behavior, Alice has always pretended to be the perfect child. It was only Grandma and I who knew her true side, but in front of everyone else, she has been an absolute angel until now. Whereas I have been the one who speaks for herself, so it makes sense why they would prefer her word over mine, which I am not justifying at all, but I wish things were different. A lot of you asked about what exactly was in the post that triggered so many of my relatives, so here we go. The post began with my father apologizing for whatever happened at the party. He continued by describing his struggle to raise me and the payback he had gotten. He said that I was always an ungrateful child, literally citing incidents from when I was 4 years old, and couldn't even let go of humiliating him at his mother's wake. He said that I manipulated my grandma with my charm, leading to her being reckless in her health habits with me, which eventually became the cause of her death. He said he had no ill intentions of stealing the inheritance from me, but thought he could help his daughter who was in actual need of the money at that moment, and that I would have easily gotten a scholarship. He said he trusted me to understand the situation, but instead, I decided to put on a show, making him the villain. I know the post sounds like a very well-crafted sob story, which it was, and was able to convince a lot of my relatives to try and bring me to the right path by calling me names and giving lectures. It's funny how he admitted everything about his mother being thrown into a senior home and his frequent baseless accusations against me, but I decided to not respond to him in his way. After getting my head in the right space, I left my house with my father hurling abuses at me for ruining the family name and my sister screaming at the top of her lungs like a toddler on seeing me. I have considered the suggestion of consulting a lawyer with my maternal aunt, who is the only one supporting me through this rift with my family. Update 2. I am writing this update 2 weeks after the last one. I called the University Admissions Board, explained to them my situation, and asked them if I could apply for a scholarship until this was settled. Due to my excellent record so far, they've approved my scholarship and I will be moving to another city to attend college by the end of this month. 2 days after I left home, I saw a missed call from Alice. I called back thinking it must be some emergency because she never calls me. She picked up the second time and asked if we both could talk in private somewhere away from home. I said I'd think about it and text her. I thought, what could be the harm in meeting her? So we decided to meet at a cafe behind our school at 5. I reached and saw her sitting with a few friends. I waved my hand at her and she asked me to join their table. I was a bit surprised thinking it was supposed to be private, but I asked her why she wanted to see me. She asked if I could give her my inheritance willingly in exchange for something. I asked her to be clear and she slid the papers to our house, signed by our parents. As soon as I realized what they were, I gave them back to her and inquired about how she got them signed. She said the day I left, both my parents got drunk to handle the pressure and that's when she got them signed. I quickly took a picture and asked her to think of the consequences for all of us since this wasn't just wrong, but illegal. She called me a bad word for a coward, which was followed by her friends calling me names as well. I got up and left. I went back to my aunt's house and told her everything. She suggested we take action quickly for this to not go out of hand. Also, by then, I had been getting a lot of unnecessary calls redirected from my dad's post, so I decided to change my number altogether. The very next day, we went to a lawyer and explained the whole situation, including the house papers my sister had possession of. He suggested that we should consider settling it out of court since I was about to turn 18 and would have control of the inheritance anyway. I called my father right then and asked him to show me Grandma's will. At first, he denied it, but he quickly changed his tone when I mentioned the legal route. He said he was ready to settle it out of court and would contact my lawyer as soon as he got in touch with his. I agreed and cut the call. Update 3. I am writing this update the morning after meeting my family again. So my father's lawyer contacted my lawyer and set a date to meet at their office. As soon as I reached the office with my aunt, I could see my parents sitting, making disappointed faces at me, with my sister sitting quietly and honestly looking scared because she knew I was about to reveal her secret. This was when I got to read the will for the first time, and it said that the money Grandma was leaving me and Alice could be used by our parents only for our necessities if it came to that, and if not, it would be transferred in full to us on our 18th birthdays. I realized there was no way for my parents to get my college fund for my sister, and I asked them how they were planning to do so. They said they would have taken a knock for me in writing to transfer my funds to my sister because I didn't need them. I felt so bad for myself that I started to cry. My aunt calmed me down and asked me to focus on what was going on. It was settled that I was going to get the money from the inheritance next month. I could see my parents didn't care about me at all, but I still wanted to do right by them. So I showed them the pictures of the house papers Alice had offered me the other day. They were confused at first, but their emotions quickly changed to anger when they heard what Alice had done. They left with her immediately, and I was given a copy of Grandma's will to read in full. My aunt took me to get ice cream as a celebration of my win, and it was the first time in a very long time that I felt this free. That night, while reading the will, I realized my grandma had left some money for charity, which my parents had sole access to, and the amount in my inheritance and college fund was way more than my entire course fee, almost 3 times. She had also left me a box kept in her bed, and she wanted me to take care of it. I remembered Grandma and her stories about her young adventures and how she had actually worked really hard to earn, which was going to help me, her second generation. Update 4. This will be the last update since the situation is now completely under control. A lot went down at my house. I got to know about it from a neighbor I was in touch with who got to know from my mother. As soon as my parents reached home with Alice, they sat her down and gave her an earful for about 2 hours regarding what a disappointment she had been and how if they had trusted me more instead of her, they would have had a child who wasn't an absolute waste. My sister was not going to listen to this and argued with them that if they looked at me and her like their children and not projects, maybe we would have turned out to be better adults. My father asked her to not drag my name through the mud with hers and asked her to give him the papers for the house immediately. She got quiet and didn't utter a word even after repeated questioning. They finally decided to call the cops on Alice. She didn't say anything at the police station either until she was made aware of the charges she'd face for scamming her parents. She immediately told them that she had sold them to some guy she knew for alcohol. They took her to the guy's place, which was a grocery store, and he had kept the papers safe with him since he thought it was bizarre that someone would give their property papers for a $40 bottle of alcohol and felt something was fishy. As soon as my father got the papers back, he decided to not press charges against Alice and took her back home. The next day, I got a call from my father asking me to come home since they wished to talk to me. His voice sounded gentle, so my aunt gave me the go-ahead to actually meet them. When I reached home, my mother started to cry and hugged me with my father waiting in the living room. They both apologized to me profusely for whatever had gone down in the last few years and expressed their wish to rebuild our relationship from scratch if I wished to do that. I agreed and decided to reconnect with them before moving to college. I asked about Alice. They told me that she had been admitted to rehab for her addiction and wouldn't be back until the next summer. My dad also deleted his post and instead posted another one apologizing to me for whatever had happened. I told him there was no need for it, but he insisted, so I didn't say much. I didn't get any apology calls from people who were bashing me before, and I happily let it go. I also went to Grandma's room and got the box mentioned in the will. On opening it, I realized it was a stack of notes from Grandma's youth until her death, describing her life journey. I read those that night and cried, remembering her. The next day, I asked my parents what they were planning to do with Grandma's charity money. They said they had no plans for it, but I suggested giving it to a group of service homes because that's where Grandma got a second life. They both agreed that this was indeed the best use of the money, and we donated it the next day. I also told them about the notes Grandma had left and how touching they were. I suggested that since Alice had nothing much going on for her, she could take those notes and publish them into an autobiography of sorts with the help of my parents. They were overjoyed at this and assured me that they'd talk to her about it once she came back. I made the decision that once I got the inheritance from Grandma, I would give some portion of it to my aunt, who was my rock during all this chaos, and some of it to my parents in the spirit of building a new relationship and for them to use it for Alice's future. I also got to see Alice on my way to college. I could see the change in her as she was looking healthier and happier and was surprisingly more welcoming to me. We talked a lot about our childhood and she apologized, but I told her it was all water under the bridge and that the main concern right now was for her to get better. Before leaving, I told her about publishing Grandma's autobiography and she said she was looking forward to it. She then bid me farewell and I finally left for college, looking ahead in life and keeping my grandma with me in the gold necklace she gave me on her last night. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Husband treats our kids like playmates, ruins their toys, and cried when our daughter said her classmate was her BFF. I'm sorry if this is jumbled or formatted weird. Our most recent fight just happened, and I'm still upset. Plus, I've never posted something like this. I'm 29F. My husband is 33M. We've been married for 4 years, together for 7. We have 2 kids, daughter 4F and son 2M. I'm really not sure where to start. My husband is an overgrown child. He just doesn't know when it's time to be serious. This is the only problem in our marriage. He's extremely loving, affectionate, and kind. He loves being a dad. He loves our children more than anything, and they love him as well. He is constantly playing with them, and I think this is where issues start to arise. My husband cannot understand when it's time to put playtime on pause. I'm serious when I say he's in playtime mode with our children from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. This results in extremely hyperactive children in the morning when I'm trying to get our daughter ready for kindergarten, and it's extremely frustrating to have to struggle to get her fed/C/D/dressed and out the door on time for school, where he then will drive her to. At night, this results in hyperactive children who can take up to 2 hours to settle down and go to bed. And by then it's way past their bedtime and they will sometimes wake up grumpy in the morning because they didn't get enough sleep. He will sometimes even be egging our children on at night when we're sitting with them in bed trying to wind them down to sleep. It's incredibly infuriating, and I will tell him to stop because I'm clearly trying to get them to sleep, and all he's doing is keeping them up. He laughs and says he's just having fun. Husband doesn't do hard discipline. He tells our kids to stop fighting each other or to stop touching fragile objects, but when it comes to timeouts or taking away things like dessert, certain toys, TV time for the day, etc., he all but refuses. He will leave me to be the bad guy, and I'm absolutely sick of it. I'm tired of feeling like I'm the mean mom who doesn't like fun or has to ruin their fun, but he just won't do it. I've told him that he needs to stop leaving all the hard discipline up to me. He says he will, but then leaves it all up to me again next time. I dread when the kids are older and things like grounding become a thing. My husband is constantly breaking our children's toys because he wants to play with them. He's broken a little kid trampoline we got for them because he wanted to jump and play on it with them. He's broken 2, our daughters and sons, of those toddler-sized motorized cars by sitting on them and riding around with them. Like, I would look out the window and see him riding around on these things having the time of his life. Meanwhile, our kids are standing on the edge of the yard watching him and waiting for their turn. He's broken a little kid basketball hoop by pretending to be on a pro basketball team and doing dunks, which bent and broke the actual hoop. Our daughter's birthday was last month, and one of our friends bought her a little scooter. My husband broke it within a week because he wouldn't stop playing and doing tricks on it every time he stepped outside the house for something. Our daughter was devastated because she loved that thing, even more so because she loves our friend who gave it to her, so to her it was extra special. I also feel terrible that this toy my friend spent her money on was destroyed by my husband before my daughter barely got any playtime on it. Now, my husband is 6 feet 0 inches and about 20 pounds overweight. He has absolutely no business playing on these children's toys, and I've told him time and time again to stop playing on them because they aren't made for a person his size and that he will break them. And then he does, and he'll sheepishly carry the broken toy into me and say sorry. But then he's back at it again, destroying another toy shortly after. We got our daughter a bike for Christmas so she can start learning, and I don't even want to give it to her because I know he'll ruin it for her like he always does with her toys. These are just some of the bigger broken toy examples. There are also countless smaller things of theirs he's broken, like balls, dolls, little cars, a dollhouse, a slide, etc. He's always making our kids play with him even when they clearly don't want to or just want to chill out/relax and sit and watch a movie. This mostly applies to our son, who is much more introverted/sensitive than our daughter, and usually prefers calm and quiet interaction over the loud and hyperactive playtime my husband always does. A handful of times he has frustrated/overwhelmed our son by continuously pushing him to play, resulting in our son starting to cry because he just wants to be left alone. Now, finally on to what prompted me to post here. My husband is always telling our kids and everyone else that our kids are his best friends. Since our daughter started learning to talk, he's trained her to answer the question, "Who's your best friend?" with Daddy. Our son is in early talking stages, and he is starting to train him to do this as well. At first, I didn't see any issues with this and actually thought it was cute, but our daughter has made a really good friend, 5F, I'll call her Emily, at school this year. Daughter is always talking about Emily and asking if Emily can come over, or if she can go to Emily's house today. My husband asked our daughter, "Who's your best friend?" And our daughter paused for a moment, got a huge grin on her face and said, "Emily." It looked like my husband had just been given the worst news of his entire life. He asked her, "What?" And our daughter started giggling and said, "Emily," again. My husband said, No, who's your best friend?" And again, still giggling, she says, "Emily." My husband's face went blank and he immediately removed himself from her and went into the other room. Our daughter seemed a little confused but mostly undisturbed and went back to watching cartoons. I followed him and asked him what was wrong. And when he starts talking, I realize he's beginning to cry. He tells me that he's supposed to be our daughter's best friend and that he can't believe she would toss him aside like that. Now, up until now, like I said, I thought this best friend thing was cute. I never realized exactly how serious my husband took this. If I had, I would have tried to put a stop to it early on. But then again, how exactly can you tell your husband to stop calling his kids his best friends anyway? I was a bit shocked at this point, and I admit I didn't use as much tact in my response as I probably could have, and asked him if he's serious. He says, "Of course I am." And I tell him that he's the parent. He's not supposed to be a best friend to his kids. He's supposed to be the parent, and that he's 29 years older than our daughter. Of course she's going to eventually make friends her own age and start considering them her best friends. He tells me I don't understand, and I told him he was being ridiculous and childish. He looks at me as if I just slapped him and tells me I'm being heartless and accuses me of not wanting him to have a good relationship with our kids, and leaves the house early to go to work. I have no idea what to do. I almost feel ridiculous because how can someone have an issue with their husband loving their kids? I feel insane, and I haven't been able to talk to any friends about this because I feel like they'll all be, "So, you're mad at your husband for playing with your kids? What's wrong with you?" But I just don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to address these issues with my husband in a way he'll understand, so he'll start being reasonable about them. I also feel extremely anxious about everything now because my husband and I have been trying for the last 2 months to conceive another baby. And now I don't want to bring another child into the world without having this mess sorted out. But I know telling my husband I want to wait on this third child will devastate him. Edit. Since it's being asked a few times, I'm just going to put this here instead of typing the same comment over and over. My husband's relationship with his parents growing up was, in his words, great. He has 3 siblings, all successful adults, and his parents' interaction with our kids now give no indication that they are the reason my husband doesn't seem able to grasp parenting himself. Update. A few things first. I just want to thank everyone who commented on my OP. I got overwhelmed with the amount of responses while on mobile, had no computer when I posted, and stopped replying, but I read every single comment and story. I've received a few PMs asking for an update, and I'm sorry it's so late. This update would be extremely long if I typed every single detail and still is kind of long, whoops. So I'm going to try and condense it. So, I sat my husband down the night he got home from work after posting my OP, and we had a long talk. Again, this would be incredibly long if I wrote all the details, so I'm going to summarize and go in the order of my points I made in my OP. Keep in mind, our talk didn't follow the order of my post, so I'm sorry if anything seems confusing since it would have been discussed out of order. On not knowing when to pause playtime, I told him that I know he loves playing with the kids, and I love that he loves playing with the kids, but that I really need him to work with me during bedtime. I also once again pointed out that their lack of sleep is making them grumpy and harder to manage in the mornings and that they're growing and need their sleep. He's had a couple of slip-ups since, but he's cooled it down around bedtime now and makes more of an effort to help me with bedtime. He started reading to them instead. I used to do it, and he is 20 times better than me at it because they love the funny voices he gives the characters. On discipline, I told him it's not fair of him to constantly make me feel like the bad guy, and that no parent likes disciplining their kids, but they need it to learn and grow into good adults, and that I need him to be united with me on punishments. He's having a little trouble with this one but has been trying more, which I appreciate. On breaking their toys, I again told him that I know he loves playing with our kids, but he needs to stop destroying their things. That not only is it upsetting them, but it's causing us to needlessly spend extra money to replace things that we don't need to be. I took this part of the talk to suggest we finally get a full-size trampoline like we had been talking about for a little while, and that he should dig out his bike from the garage so he can ride with our daughter when she learns. We're both probably more excited about the trampoline than the kids. We talked more about this topic, but these are the most relevant points. He realized he goes a little too far after I described the scene I wrote about in my OP with him riding around on their little cars while the kids are standing on the sidelines. I'm also happy to report he has stayed off our daughter's new bike. On making the kids play when they don't want to, he agreed that it wasn't cool of him to push just because he wants to play. I told him our kids are people, and just because they're kids doesn't mean they don't deserve to have their boundaries respected or time to themselves. And now on to the best friend thing. This was the first thing we discussed. Long story short, he was feeling hurt and generally having a little trouble accepting our daughter was growing up. This is really the first big thing she's done or said to show that she is in fact growing up, and he just wasn't expecting it and handling it very poorly, which he knew he did. I took a line from a comment on my OP and told him our children will have lots of best friends in their lifetime, but he will always be their only dad. This visibly comforted him, so thank you to whoever it was who wrote that. I took a suggestion from someone on the OP and suggested that he call up his own parents and ask them for advice on how they handled watching 4 kids grow up and leave the nest. He really liked this idea and has since done so. I also showed him stories commenters on my OP shared about their relationship with their parents growing up. I told him that I'm not showing him them because I think he's going to become like those parents, but that I think it's important he see the children's side of things. These stories hit him pretty hard, which led into this. So, I left something out of my OP that I didn't realize was relevant. Lots of people asked how my husband's relationship with his parents was growing up, and I answered that it was great. However, my own relationship with my parents was horrible. Long story short, I don't get along with nor even like my parents, and I see/talk to them maybe once a year. Growing up was miserable, to say the least, and it affected me for quite a long time where I was a huge ball of anger and resentment because of the way my parents treated me. I told my husband about all of this a few months after we started dating, so he was aware of everything from the start. My husband told me he told himself he would be the best dad he could be because he wanted our kids to have the childhood he knew I wanted and wanted for them now. I started crying here and was a bit of a mess for a few minutes. It was honestly one of the most touching things anyone has ever said to me. I told him he is the best dad and that I love him so much for it. Finding out that this was essentially the root of everything, it was a lot easier to continue on with the rest of my points. Everything has been great since. He really listened to what I was saying this time and has made a big effort to help me out more, while also cooling it a bit with the kids. Him and our daughter have been riding around on their bikes together every weekend. I've also started learning how to ride so I can eventually join. Again, I want to thank everyone for commenting on my OP and helping me gather my thoughts. I thought a few things said about my husband were a bit extreme, but I realized that's something that happens when people give advice on a situation they only have so much on. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My cousin accused me of SA, and my family kicked me out, cut off my college fund. Now she's dying of cancer and admitted the truth, but my family still wants me to keep quiet. When I was 18, my cousin, let's call her Jade, decided to falsely accuse me of SA, and unfortunately, my entire family bought the story. Jade is 4 years older than me, and we used to be close when we were kids, but eventually we just grew apart. She is my uncle's daughter, who happens to be a single father, my mom's younger brother. My uncle got married to his ex-wife when they were really young because he got pregnant, but she ended up cheating on him, and that marriage ended within a couple of years. She tried to stay in touch with Jade for a few years, but eventually, she moved away with her new boyfriend, and since then, they have not had any contact. My uncle was a respectable man, and he was the kind of person who would struggle through everything on his own but never accept help from anyone. He was a single father, and it was kind of admirable how he had dedicated his entire life to raising his daughter. So much so that he never even got serious with anyone else after his divorce with his ex. Until Jade was 18, her father took care of everything and even had a college fund set aside for her. But after that, when she said that she wanted to continue studying, Her father told her that he had done everything in his power to fund her education, but now she was going to have to be on her own because he had to look out for his own retirement as well. And I think that was a pretty fair way to deal with the situation, because if she wanted to pursue higher studies, that should have been on her own dime and not her father's, because by then she was definitely old enough to be working. But she did not agree with that, and she believed that her dad should continue to fund her education for as long as she wants to study, and they had a lot of fights about it. As a result, she ended up spending a lot of time with my family, because every time that she would end up fighting with her father, she would come to my mom and vent to her. I personally thought that my uncle was being quite reasonable, but I never said anything about it because Jade would come over to speak to my mom and not me, so it was not my place to comment anyway. One day, she came home unannounced, like she usually did, and my parents were not home. I don't remember exactly where they were. They had probably gone out for a party, but I remember being the only person back home. So, when she showed up, I instantly told her that my mother was not there, and I thought that she would go away after that, but she decided to sit inside the living room because apparently she just needed some time away from her father because they had just gotten into yet another horrible fight. To be honest, I had heard enough about her fights with her father because she used to be very loud when she would come over to talk to my mother, and I wasn't really interested in hearing it again. But since my mom was not there, she started venting to me about it, and I think she was expecting me to be just as sympathetic towards her as my mother had been, but I had very different opinions on the situation. So, when she started ranting about her father again, I cut her off, and I told her that my mother might have fed into her delusions, but I thought that what my uncle was doing was perfectly reasonable. I told her that he had dedicated his entire life to raising her to be a competent and capable, independent woman, so now it was her chance to prove him right. And if she really wanted to pursue a master's degree and then get a doctorate, she would have to do what everyone else does and pay for it all herself. She was also a STEM major, and I knew that whatever job she would eventually find, it would be enough for her to support herself. All she had to do was at least try, but she just kept insisting that it would be just too much for her to handle, and she couldn't work as well as study. So I told her that if she had already made up her mind that it was impossible for her to start working and continue her education, then maybe she should just give up on higher studies. But it was really unfair of her to demand that her father continue to pay for everything, especially after he had done so much for her. And instead of being grateful for it, she was acting like he was the villain here. I guess she hadn't expected that reality check, and as soon as I said all of this to her, she started yelling at me and told me that I was a horrible human being and that I would never understand what she was going through because I was a privileged brat and didn't even deserve to have the support that I did. If I'm being honest, I thought she was more of a privileged brat than I was, but whatever. She yelled at me for a couple of minutes and then ran out of the house crying. I did not go after her because, like I said, I was not interested in hearing her cry about the same thing over and over again. But I definitely had not expected what happened after that, because the next day I got accused of SA by her, and my entire world turned upside down because of that one accusation. And now, when people are finally finding out that she had lied about everything, my family is blowing up my phone after not having spoken to me for the past 3 years. Anyway, the day after Jade and I had that fight, my parents woke me up in the morning, and I still remember everything as clearly as yesterday because it was probably the most traumatizing day of my life. They woke me up saying that my uncle and Jade were there to see me, and apparently it was very important. I had no idea what had happened by then, but once I came downstairs, Jade started screaming about how I'd her the previous night and started faking a breakdown. My uncle looked extremely disturbed, and my parents were also very shocked. Since she was not in a condition to speak, at least she was pretending that she wasn't. My uncle was the one who did all the talking. And he told my parents that when she had come back home the day after she had fought with him, she had been crying relentlessly, and eventually he had managed to actually get what had happened out of her. She had gone back home to her father and told him that apparently since my parents were not at home, I had lured her in and then, well, done what she accused me of. He couldn't even look at me, and my parents were also avoiding looking at me. I tried to protest, and I tried to claim that I didn't do it, but nobody was listening to me. It was horrible because even though I hadn't done anything, people were already treating me like a criminal right in front of me. My parents started begging for forgiveness and told my uncle not to report me or to go public with this, and said that they were ready to do anything that it took to fix the situation. No matter how hard I cried out, my parents and my uncle completely ignored my existence in the room. And it got so frustrating the way they were ignoring me and talking to each other that I picked up a vase out of frustration and threw it at the wall just so they would pay attention to me. But that kind of backfired because my dad lost his temper and grabbed me by the arm and dragged me to my room and then shut me inside. I kept banging against the door until my fists and arms started hurting because there was no way I was going to let Jade get away with this. It was a huge lie to tell, and it might have even ruined my reputation. But unfortunately, my dad did not let me out of the room until my uncle and Jade had left. When he finally opened the door, I started crying immediately, and I tried to tell them that I hadn't done anything of the sort, but they told me that they had watched the security footage from the cameras outside our house, and they knew that Jade had actually come over the previous evening and had run out of the house crying a couple of minutes later. And judging by the way she had run out crying, they had chosen to believe her. They said that Jade literally did not have any reason to lie about what had happened and told me that they were ashamed of the kind of son that they had raised. My mother was in tears and couldn't bring herself to say anything, but my dad told me that with every difficulty they had managed to get my uncle and Jade to promise that they were not going to take any sort of legal action against me. But this meant that they would also have to promise them something in return, and Jade and my uncle had demanded that I be sent far, far away so that she wouldn't have to see me around and relive the traumatic experience. So after a lot of discussion, my dad decided that he was going to send me away to live with my great-uncle who lives in LA. He was the least liked family member because of his terrible attitude and anger issues, and my dad knew that I did not like him at all. But that was the place farthest away from my family, and my dad told me that this was the only solution, so now I just had to accept it. And not only were they going to send me away, but they had also told Jade that they were going to take away the college fund that they had set aside for me and give it all to her just so they would keep it all quiet. I tried to protest, but there was no talking to them, and eventually I gave up because I just didn't see the point of anything anymore since even my own parents did not seem to trust me. I was also able to figure out that Jade had probably accused me falsely of such things simply because she wanted something to hold against my parents so that she could extract money from them because her own father would never accept help of any kind, especially financial, not even from his own family. Anyway, within a couple of days of that incident, I was all packed up and ready to leave, and my parents did not even bother to hug me or wish me goodbye. For the next couple of days, my parents pretended that I was not even at home, and I was under house arrest, so I couldn't even say goodbye to any of my friends. They had taken away my phone and told me that if I did not go off the grid and practically disappeared from everybody's life, they would go public themselves and then my life would be ruined. So I was forced to cut ties with everyone from my past and move away from everything that I knew, all because of a lie that Jade had told. A couple of days after that incident, my great-uncle showed up to pick me up, and I was sent off to live with him in an exile of sorts. Since then, I have had no contact with anyone from my past. Not my family and not my friends, and I've had to completely restart my life. When I first moved away with my great-uncle, it was very difficult for me to adjust to his ways because he would constantly taunt me throughout the day even though he didn't even know why I had been kicked out. But the fact that I had been kicked out was enough for him to hold it against me and constantly mock me about it. And I've already talked about how he had a terrible attitude and issues with anger, so I had to walk on eggshells around him. I knew that my parents were sending him money every month, but he still pretended like he was doing me a huge favor by letting me stay with him. I knew that I wouldn't be able to live with him, and after the first few weeks, I decided that there was no point in crying over spilled milk. My parents had cut me off, and I was forbidden from having any contact with anyone from my previous life. So all I could do was make the best of the situation, and I decided to start applying for jobs. I couldn't go to college anyway. I knew that because even though I had been accepted into the college of my choice, I didn't have the money or the means to go there, so I started applying to jobs after a few weeks of moping around. And after a couple of interviews, I was finally able to get a job as a warehouse worker. It didn't pay much, and I was miserable because of how physically draining the job was. But at least when I got my first salary, I was able to move out of my horrible great-uncle's place. I was lucky enough to have a couple of coworkers around the same age as me who were also struggling with money. We became close friends, and 3 of us decided to pitch in and get an apartment together. So that's how I was able to move out of my great-uncle's house. And I didn't even bother to tell him because I knew that for him it would be a good riddance anyway. After I moved out from his place, I never heard from any of my family members again. For the past 3 years, I've been living with the same people that I got my first apartment with, and we have all been incredibly lucky because after working for a few months in the warehouse, all three of us decided to continue looking for better opportunities since we were always too physically exhausted. Over the past 3 years, we have changed a lot of jobs and have been putting aside money because all three of us want to go to college. They have also had their fair share of struggles, but that's not relevant anyway. Right now, I'm working in sales and I'm making a decent amount, and I've been thinking about reapplying to colleges. As for my two friends, they are also doing well, and we have recently also moved into a bigger apartment in a much nicer neighborhood. But of course, now that things have started looking up for me, my family thinks that it's the perfect time to try and get back into my life. As I had said, I have had no contact with them for the past 3 years, so I was quite surprised when my dad reached out to me through email a few days back. I'm not active on any social media since that had been one of the rules that my parents had set when they kicked me out, and I had been very paranoid about them spreading the story and ruining my reputation and life if I went against the rules, so I had stuck to it. My email address has not changed in the past 3 years, and I have never blocked them anywhere, even though they have. Anyway, I was very surprised to hear from him because after everything that happened, I had genuinely not expected it. When I read the email, it was basically just an apology for everything that had happened over the past 3 years, and he wanted me to give him my address and contact info so that he could reach out to me properly. He had provided me with his own contact info as well in case I wanted to reach out to him on my own time. The reason he was apologizing and trying to reach out to me in the first place at all was because Jade had finally realized that it was time that she told everyone the truth about what had really happened. She was on her deathbed, and I guess she had finally developed a conscience or something, but for whatever reason, she had decided to tell her father the truth about what had happened, and he had spoken to my parents. So after learning the truth, my parents decided to reach out to me once again. But coming on to what has happened with Jade, she has been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it's very unlikely that she's going to make it. She's been suffering for the past 8 months, and her condition is only deteriorating even though the treatment is still ongoing. And no, she wasn't even able to make good use of all the money that she received from my college fund after she screwed me over. She wasted it all away with her terrible life choices because instead of pursuing her master's degree, she decided to take a gap year with all that money and travel the world so she could expand her horizons and truly find herself. She came back around 1.5 years ago, and she had already eaten away at more than half of her savings because she wanted to live luxuriously. So by the time she came back, she had very little money left and started asking my parents for more. But my uncle threatened to cut her off if she took any more money from my parents, so she was forced to give up on the idea of college because with whatever money she had left, she couldn't afford a master's degree without working, and that's not something that she wanted. But she still had some money left, so she could have put it to good use and at least worked to build more capital. However, I guess that year-long vacation had made her lazy, and she was already pretty spoiled, so she went on to waste even more of her money by buying an apartment and continuing to live beyond her means even though she still hadn't even started looking for a job. Finally, she was able to find a job about 1 year ago, but then she was diagnosed with cancer and had to quit. And now she has had to sell the apartment and everything else that she bought because she needs the money. And I don't want to come off as insensitive, but after reading what had happened with her, I felt really great because she did not need any enemies since she herself was her own biggest enemy. Once I was done reading the email, I had to think about whether I wanted to get back in touch with my parents or not, and I decided to speak to my friends about it. This also meant that I finally had to tell them the truth about why I had been kicked out of my house by my parents because initially, I had only told them that we had had a bunch of disagreements and that's why they had kicked me out, but I hadn't told them the real reason. But after that email, I finally discussed it with my friends because I really didn't have anybody else to speak to about it. I told them everything about Jade and how she had lied and thrown me under the bus. Then I told them all about my parents as well and how they had believed her over me. Not only had they kicked me out and sent me to live with the worst relative possible, but they had also forced me to cut everyone from my past off and had actually threatened to ruin my reputation themselves if I went against them. My friends could actually hardly believe what I was telling them while I was narrating everything to them, and after I was done, they told me that there was no way that they would get back in touch with my parents and forgive them if they were in my place. And I'm taking it seriously because it's coming from my closest friends and pretty much the only ones that I have at this point. I wouldn't have thought about it much if they had just told me not to get back in touch with my parents and just let it go. But they think that I should speak up about what happened to me because for the past 3 years I've been living in fear even though I haven't really done anything. They are right to be honest. I had to give up so much of my life because somebody told a lie about me and my parents went with it, so if I want to reclaim that, I need to speak up about what happened to me. But before doing that, I decided to tell my parents that I was going to go with the story, in the real version of what happened, because people deserve to know. And I don't really care if Jade is on her deathbed or whatever. She ruined my life, and now I'm going to reclaim it. So I texted the number that my dad had sent me and I told him whatever I was going to do because I already had the screenshots of the email that he had sent me confirming that Jade had been lying. So now I could post about it on social media, and forget about posting, I could finally have social media again. I wasn't asking him for permission, but I guess he misread the situation, and now he and my mother and even my uncle are blowing up my phone requesting me not to do this because Jade already has been through a lot, and she is suffering like never before, so she has already received her karma, and I don't need to punish her even more. They want me not to go public with the truth because that's going to ruin her reputation, and they think that I can come back and return to everything that I left behind without telling people the truth about why I'd left in the first place, and nobody's going to question it. And they're right, I can't do that, but I don't really think that I want to because Jade took away a huge part of my life, and even my friends think that it's perfectly within reason for me to post the truth. It's not to get back at her. It's just so that people know what has happened, and I don't think that there are a lot of reasonable excuses to disappear from everybody's life for 3 years and then come back again. Besides, I don't even plan on going back to the city. I'm content enough here, but I do miss my friends and a lot of my relatives who were good to me, so I think at least they deserve to know the truth. My parents and my uncle have been blowing up my phone relentlessly though, which is the only thing that has been stopping me from posting. Jade is apparently not in good shape at all, and they have been practically begging me not to post about anything. So what if I went ahead anyway and posted the truth about why I'd had to leave everything behind for 3 years and expose my cousin even though she's on her deathbed right now? Update 1. I did it, guys. I thought about it for a really long time. I consulted my friends again and repeatedly, and they told me the same thing. Jade and my family had taken away 3 years of my life that I could have spent normally, but I had to live in fear because of them even though I hadn't actually done anything. It would be perfectly within reason for me to retaliate regardless of what condition Jade was in, and a lot of comments here also believe the same thing. To be honest, at the end of the day it was my own decision, but knowing that most people are going to back me up on this made me feel a lot better. It has been a week since my original post, and last night I put up my post narrating everything that has happened in my life and why exactly I've been off the grid and out of everybody's life for the past 3 years. Everyone who used to know me in the past, including my friends and relatives, has reached out to me to let me know that they are there for me and that they have missed me greatly for the past 3 years. I honestly believe it because I did receive a lot of emails from a lot of people in the first couple of months, but apparently after that, my parents told everyone not to go looking for me because I wanted to be left alone because I had been through something very traumatizing and I need time and space to heal. So after the first few months of no contact, people stopped trying to reach out to me because they wanted to give me my space. All my friends told me that they had asked my parents about my whereabouts several times, but they had never revealed it, so they couldn't get in touch with me. And even a lot of my relatives told me that they had waited patiently for me to surface again. It actually made me cry a little seeing how nobody had forgotten me and how ready everyone was to welcome me back. Most importantly, people have said that they had always found Jade very shady, but getting to know this was low even by her standards. My parents and my uncle have had nothing to say so far, and I'm hoping that they stay out because I really don't want to speak to them. As for myself, I feel a lot more free and lightweight now that all of this is off my chest. So speaking up about what has happened with me was a good choice, and I don't regret anything. Update 2. Hi. It has been a couple of days since I made that post, and my parents reached out to me yesterday to let me know that they are really disappointed in me because they had only requested one thing. That I let sleeping dogs lie and I come up with some excuse as to why I was missing for 3 years but not tell everyone the truth about what had happened because Jade deserves some peace and quiet given her condition. Apparently, after my post, she has lost pretty much all of her friends, and not even anyone from the family is willing to speak to her anymore, as if it's my fault. It was shocking that even now they care more about what Jade is going through than what their own son has been through in the past. An apology is never going to cut it, and I told them that I didn't care about their disappointment anymore. They had also let me down on multiple levels, and now they had no right to expect anything from me. If Jade deserves some peace and quiet right now just because she's sick with cancer, I could also say the same thing about myself because when they kicked me out and sent me to live with my horrible great-uncle, I was just 18 and yet they had no sympathy or mercy for me. And at least I'm telling the truth. Jade had lied, and she got away with it for 3 years. So now I'm going to reclaim my life, and I'm not going to allow anyone to try and make me feel guilty about it. I told them never to contact me again, and that the only people they should be disappointed in are themselves. Then I finally blocked them, something I should have done a really long time back, but I was scared and confused. However, I think speaking up about what has happened to me has given me a sense of closure, and now I don't feel the pressure to deal with my parents anymore. They and their expectations can take a hike for all I care. Update 3. Hey, so I decided to finally visit my friends and family after 3 long years this weekend, and it was pretty much the best decision I had ever made. I also took my roommates along with me for moral support more than anything else, and to be honest, they have also become so close that we are like brothers now, and I wanted them to meet my friends as well. Everyone's been getting along great, and my friends seem overjoyed to see me. I am actually even living with one of them right now because all of them got offended when I said that I was going to be staying in a hotel. I'm going to go back in a couple of days, but my heart is just so full of joy that I can't even explain it in words. My roommates and my old friends are all living together in one of my friends' houses, and we are having the time of our lives. I've also managed to meet quite a few of my relatives, and they've told me that they have cut off my parents, my uncle, and Jade, and they don't plan on having anything to do with these people ever again. And it makes me really happy that, at the end of the day, people always are going to take a stand for what is right. I'm glad that I'm surrounded by people like this who didn't forget me and love me more than my parents do. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Family and friends ruined my marriage by making me paranoid about my wife cheating. After divorce, I confronted them. They admitted trying to steal her away. I've been divorced for almost 2 years, and a few weeks ago, my father, 67M, my 2 brothers, 37M and 40M, and 4 friends, 35M, 37M, 38M, 41M, while very drunk, joked about how they can't believe I left my wife. They said that they all tried to get with her since the divorce, but she had repeatedly rejected them, saying it would be inappropriate and unkind to do such a thing to me. I laughed at what they were saying just to ease them into saying more, and once they thought I found it funny, they really opened up. They had all purposely made me feel paranoid about my ex-wife cheating on me and using me, because why would a woman like her be with a man like me if it wasn't for the money I made? They often hinted at her, sometimes even directly said, that she wore the pants in the relationship and that she was only with me because I'm easily manipulated. They constantly planted negative things into my mind. If I went to talk with them about something happening in my relationship, they would put a negative twist to it, or they'd purposely give me bad advice. Then, when I lost my job during COVID, they all hinted at how she's definitely cheating now, that there's no financial benefit in being faithful to me. I obviously trusted them and often took their words to heart, and it ruined my marriage. I frequently argued with my wife, and I was always accusing her of something or suspecting her of not really loving me. I questioned everything that was between us. I often told her things like how I'm a high-value man, and that she needed to appreciate me, and when I was not working for 6 months, I flipped the script and started accusing her of not respecting me for not working. I was unappreciative of all her hard work and for being the one who took care of our household bills and any other bill during those 6 months of unemployment. I continued to let their words drive me into paranoia, and I started accusing her of cheating with her coworkers. Eventually, my wife had enough of my moods, constant mistrust, and accusations. She left me, and to be honest, for a long time it felt like it came out of nowhere, and so I had myself convinced she left me for another man. Now here I am knowing that every man I've called my family, my friend, were all my enemies who I let destroy my marriage. I obviously lost my mind once they were done telling me all the ways they conspired to ruin my marriage, and we did get to blows. I've cut off all contact with each and every one of them. I want to reach out to my ex and make amends and hopefully get her back. My ex-wife has agreed to meet up with me, and she doesn't know exactly what I want to discuss with her. And I don't know how to go about making amends and hopefully mending our relationship. How do I tell her how much I regret everything and that I want her to give me a second chance? Is there even a chance for us? Edit. Some of y'all keep saying I took the words of my friends over my wife's, and I don't think that's a fair or complete assessment. I trusted my father and brothers. My father was the main driving force behind this manipulation campaign, and it's not often that your entire family is conspiring against you, and not only your family but also your friends. I'm not running away from accepting the fact that it is wholly my fault and how my marriage ended. I take ownership of that. I take ownership of the fact that I accused my wife of being a cheater or a user. I regret it all. If my ex-wife doesn't accept my apology, I would accept it gracefully. If she said she never wanted to talk to me or ever get back together, I'd also accept it. I would not stand in the way, and I would not try to change her mind. I would wish her well and leave her be. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Well, they certainly knew you're easy to manipulate, don't they? I'm glad you cut these people off, and I would also make a concerted effort to your ex out. I don't know if she'll ever forgive you, but at least give her closure if that's what she needs. Opie. As much as it hurts to read this and to see myself as such a person, it is true. I trusted these men. I especially trusted my father and brothers. I never thought my own family would be plotting to ruin my marriage and get with my wife. I absolutely won't get in the way of her unburdening herself. I can only hope she can find a way to forgive me and to possibly trying to get back together. But I'm not holding my breath. I would respect her wishes even if that means she'll never forgive me. Comment 2. So, are you telling me that your dad and brothers also tried to get with your wife? Comment 3. I'm shocked they are still alive after a confession like that. I command Bahamians just to volatile to hear something like that and not go off. That's just vile. Opie. I didn't include the violence that broke out once. I didn't at all because I didn't want to get my post banned. Blood was absolutely spilled, and of course I had my ass beat because it was 7 against 1, but I did do damage. An ambulance and the police were called. None of us pressed charges against each other and left it at that. Honestly, I am still raging, and I've been heartbroken since. Update. March 4th, 2024. 6 days later. On Sunday, I got to meet up with my ex-wife. I apologized profusely, and she was kind and understanding but said she couldn't and wouldn't forgive me. She said that it simply isn't in her nature to forgive and that despite it all, she holds no grudges or anger against me and wishes me nothing but goodness in my life. She did give me some advice and told me that I have been in an abusive relationship all my life and that in order to heal whatever is broken in me, that I should cut out my father, as he sets the tone for my treatment by the rest of my family. She had pointed out the many ways my father has hurt me or had encouraged my family to mistreat me. She said I'd always be stagnated and unhappy if I continued to associate myself with my family and former friends. I told her that I cut them out of my life and that I've got my first therapy session scheduled in a few days. She said she was proud of me for taking my first step into healing. Our conversation was heartfelt and emotionally devastating as we discussed the many ways our marriage had failed, as well as the abuse I've experienced by my father and family. We cried the entire time. We cried a lot. We ended our conversation with a long hug, and then we said our goodbyes. Final comment from Opie. Forgiveness is earned through changed behavior and recognition of your harm, but it isn't guaranteed or something you deserve. Some things shouldn't be forgiven, and that doesn't mean it eats away at the person or that it somehow holds them back. So, I do agree with her when she said that you don't need to forgive in order to heal or gain emotional maturity, and sometimes forgiveness is not even an option. For her, this one of those things that she simply can't and won't forgive, and all I can do is accept it. As much as I'd like her forgiveness, it is simply not available to me, and that's perfectly fine. Now on to the next story. Story 11. We found out our marriage counselor tried to secretly destroy our marriage and lied to us. My husband of 7 months and I had a rough time after we got married. When he came back from military deployment, screaming matches, erectile dysfunction, resentment from deployment, me feeling sexually unattractive, etc. We went to a military-funded marriage counselor for about 2 months before the therapist suddenly disappeared, saying he was getting transferred. Said he'd continue seeing us once a week, but suddenly his phone number changed, and we had no idea what happened. We just stopped counseling altogether due to scheduling issues. Our last session was around February or so. I thought the marriage counseling helped as we'd been doing better, or so I thought, but apparently my husband is still unhappy, albeit for other reasons now. Our sex life still sucks, and I feel horribly unwanted and undesirable despite being fit and attractive. We had a fight last night, and finally the substance of our individual counseling came out for the first time. We were shocked, to say the least. So, we'd had both individual and couples counseling. We'd meet around once a week as a couple and would alternate weeks individually. It came out last night. The counselor had been telling us individually that the problem was all the other's fault. He gave us both some of the same story but with some differences. He told us each that the other was being very closed off and defensive and not wanting to open up or discuss issues, that we were each blaming the other. This was while I was openly sharing with him my abandonment and anger issues and feeling insecure sexually and providing him with background info from my previous therapy sessions with other counselors. My husband claims he would try to offer stories from his past as well, but that the counselor would actually cut him off and say he wasn't the problem. He told my husband privately I may have BPD and likely needed meds. This coincides chronologically with my husband out of nowhere yelling at me during arguments that I needed medication. I asked our counselor if I should see a specialist after these fights, whether I really was showing these signs, and said honestly that I would see more intensive help if he thought it would help our marriage. He laughed at my husband in individual sessions, saying there was nothing wrong with me, that my husband was deflecting by trying to diagnose me. Does he think he's a psychiatrist? He would laugh. He told me privately my husband was emotionally and sexually underdeveloped and would never have a healthy relationship sexually or emotionally with anyone without serious change, that I should move on, that he was not willing to change or admit to any issues and would run from all conflict, that each time the counselor tried to broach issues my husband would clam up and get defensive, that he didn't know what it truly meant to be married, and that he suspected there was something deeply rooted. In my husband's past, that was the root of all our problems, that my husband just needed more therapy. Note: we weren't paying for therapy. We got it free due to military benefits. He told me I was very smart and attractive and deserved a partner more on my level. My husband reports the counselor told him there was nothing wrong with him, that he was very mature and intelligent and all our problems stemmed from my psychosis. Update: I am horrified by how many of our fights after the beginning of counseling were colored by his statements. I was treating my husband like a 13-year-old boy, and my husband kept telling me I needed psychiatric treatment. Our marriage has actually improved much after this time, but I now believe it's because I worked on my anger issues and gave my husband the benefit of the doubt, while my husband became a better communicator in arguments. My husband now has different issues with our marriage, but we are both still reeling from our conversation about the counselor last night and wondering what kind of harm it may have caused. I don't really know what I'm asking here. I had insomnia all night about this, and I just don't know what to do. Edit. Direct question. Should I report the counselor? And what are suggestions for how to move forward with my husband in this? Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. Man, that is some Dr. Lecter nonsense. I hope you can get his license yanked. Comment 2. Jesus, what the hell is wrong with this guy? His job is to fix relationships. He is doing the exact opposite. This is something out of an M. Night Shyamalan film. Comment 3. What would happen during the joint sessions? How did he manage to maintain the two sides of the story simultaneously? Opie. He would request an update of our status since last meeting. We would both give our perspectives on the latest fight or on why we thought we resolved an issue successfully. Then he would provide suggestions, but a lot of it seemed fluffy. I always resented him not confronting my husband on his issues, and I now know my husband was angry the counselor wasn't suggesting I get evaluated for BPD. Honestly, I did have issues with rage, and he didn't help me at all, even when I tried to bring them up individually. I read a lot of self-help books specific to managing anger and did a lot of introspection and practice techniques on calming down. I also read some books on marriages. Our relationship has improved greatly, but I think it's because both my husband and I did a lot of self-help. I have no idea what couples incapable of such introspection and self-awareness would have done with someone like him. Comment 4. By law, aren't therapists supposed to keep notes or recordings of each session? Opie. There were no notes. He explained it was all kept confidential as per military policy. This made sense to me at the time because a lot of military veterans don't want documentation that might hurt their careers and such, so he explained it as a policy issue meant to encourage soldiers to attend counseling instead of bottling it all up. Additional info. I feel so stupid. I felt like something was off. I didn't include this in my post, but he would propose strategies for getting my husband to come out of his shell at the next joint session. But he wouldn't follow through. My husband says he said the same thing to him and would be flabbergasted at joint sessions when the counselor did a 180 on him. Date 1. So, this is an update more than 3 years later. I hope this is allowed. I used a throwaway and don't remember my password. A lot happened since then, and it occurred to me that maybe I should post an update in case anyone here was around for that. I was the wife who was seeing a marriage counselor with my husband, both jointly and individually. Things were only getting worse and worse, and it was only after a blow-up fight that my husband and I compared notes and realized the counselor had been feeding each of us lies. Counselor was telling me that my husband was emotionally 12 years old and would never be capable of a relationship, while reassuring my husband all was well with him. Meanwhile, he was telling my husband I had borderline personality disorder and needed medication. When my husband started accusing me of being mentally ill, I brought this up to the counselor, who then began making fun of my husband for saying such a thing. Does he think he's a psychiatrist or something? He actually laughed. Counselor reassured me that I was a beautiful and intelligent woman and would do great once I left my husband. The counselor, who was provided by the military through their family services, ended up being transferred a few weeks after we discovered this. We couldn't figure out if he got canned for abusing some other couple, if he retired, or some other shenanigan. Well, fast forward to today. My husband and I are doing great now. We went on a vacation. Both of us changed jobs, moved, and we are very happily married now 4 years later. We travel, adopted a couple of kids, and bought a house in a place we both love. How we got here? We both read some self-help books, started giving each other the benefit of the doubt, got better at communicating. I left my super high-stress job, he changed careers, and everything sort of did a 180. Funny enough, my old job had been killing me, and one I'd mentioned to counselor that I thought maybe I should find another job since it was so dysfunctional. He protested against it. My husband and I did not report him at the time. We were concerned he would retaliate against my husband in some way, as my husband was in the armed forces for a year and a half after all this. I am embarrassed that we did not report him. We were scared and overwhelmed. I am considering calling that B's family services now and filing an official report. Not sure if it'll matter, so much time has passed. That's all really. You all were such a great help then. I thought I might as well post this in case anyone around here remembered. P.S. I thought to post this after watched an M. Night Shyamalan movie recently. One of the commenters had mentioned this sounded like a film he'd make. Smiley face. I still laugh at that comment years later. So thank you /Brandon23Z and /Aaron for that. Comments from Opie. Opie here. It's hard, but I actually ended up seeing another licensed and well-reviewed therapist when I lost someone very important to me. This counselor was wonderful and really helped me. I did my research and paid out of pocket for her. She was an angel and worth every penny. I think finding a good therapist is a lot like dating. There are some crazies, some a-holes, and some you just don't click with. Also, maybe you get what you pay for, and Dr. Lecter was free with the military. It really would. The one good thing Dr. Lecter did was tell me, your husband says some stupid things in arguments. He doesn't actually mean to hurt you. This blew my mind because as someone very good with words, I couldn't understand how someone could say such hurtful things without harboring malice. But I followed his advice and was more patient when my husband would say something ridiculous. Also, finding a new job helped me a ton. I didn't recognize how much of a nervous wreck I was thanks to that godforsaken office. I became much more even-keeled overnight. This did wonders on why the counselor played games. I've thought a lot about it. I think he was honestly at the end of his career and decided we were both good people with personal issues that brought out the worst in each other. My hypothesis is he didn't want to do the work and figured he'd just get us to break up and move on with our lives rather than take months to get us to realize we were just incompatible. But yeah, I decided to call the base Monday and report. Now on to the next story. Story 12. BF almost proposed in Vegas, then went cold feet. Turns out he's in love with his coworker and has been cheating for months. I've been with my boyfriend John for 5 years. We have a pretty awesome relationship. Great communication. Fun, easygoing with good chemistry. We've always talked about getting married, and I have had no doubts that we would be getting engaged very soon. Recently, John's closest friend and his girlfriend went on a trip to Vegas for several days. We had a great time, all four of us. And on our last night there, John told us he wanted to go to the Bellagio fountains to see them before we had to leave. Everyone was up for it. We went for a nice dinner beforehand and then began watching the fountains, and the music came on. It was really romantic and I was really enjoying myself. And that's when John grabbed my wrist. He turned me toward him and I saw that he was sweating profusely. His face was bright red, and he looked like he was about to pass out from trembling so hard. The whole time it looked like he was about to say something, but he never did. He just informed all of us that he wasn't feeling well and wanted to go back to the hotel. Our friends looked really puzzled and were whispering into each other's ears all the way back to the hotel. I kept asking John if he was okay, and he just said he probably had too much to drink. We've been back for a couple of weeks, and he's been acting really distant and cold. I honestly knew something weird was up that night in Vegas, so I called up John's friend's girlfriend, who I'm fairly close to, and asked her if she knew what was going on with John, since he had been at their place a lot this past week instead of coming home. Eventually, she spilled the beans and told me he had plans of proposing to me that night at the fountains but then didn't. That's why the two of them had been acting so confused. I kept grilling her, and she also told me that John had told his friend that it didn't feel right. She made me promise not to tell John that I knew because she didn't want anyone to be upset with her. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. We live together, and he has been spending all of his time at his friend's house or at his parents' place since we got back. He barely calls me or responds to my texts anymore. I don't know what happened that night, but I feel like he's about to end things. I want to talk to him, but I don't know how to approach the issue. Do I just say, "Hey, I heard you were going to pop the question the other night but changed your mind. What gives?" Was he really nervous? I'm freaking out. Edit. He'll be home shortly. I told him over the phone I needed to talk to him, and his words were, "I need to talk to you too. I'll update when I can. Thanks for all the advice, folks." Update. Hello everyone. I apologize for not updating sooner, but a lot has happened. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who posted comments and to those who tried to reassure me. So, John came home last night around 11:30 as I was watching TV in our bedroom. He came in and looked like absolute shit. His eyes looked tired and baggy, and he smelled like beer. He apologized to me for the way he had been acting recently and told me he knew that I knew about the proposal, as he had talked to his friend Mike, and he told John that his girlfriend Tara had told me everything. He basically said to me that he had the whole thing planned out. He was going to propose and Tara and Mike would take pictures. Then we would go back to a romantic, more expensive room in our hotel, which Mike and Tara had to end up staying in that night so as to make sure I wasn't aware of the fact that John was supposed to propose. They switched key cards while I was walking back. He then told me what I was afraid of. It just didn't feel right. I was looking at you and it just wasn't what I wanted. He told me that he had been nervous ever since he bought the ring, but that he thought it would go away once he actually proposed. In the moment, he said he knew that it was not what he wanted and thought it would be better to not ask me to marry him because he knew it wasn't what he'd want in the long run. So at this point, I'm in hysterics as I pretty much know that this is the end of the relationship. I tried to be calm and rational about it, but there was one point where I was crying so hard that I literally got down on my knees, put my head in his lap while he sat on the couch, and just kept incoherently saying, "Please," in between sobs. Not my proudest moment, but at that moment, this man was my best friend, the future father of my children. I just never, ever in a million years pictured our relationship coming to this point. He ended it with me last night because it didn't feel right. And that's all he could say to me over and over. It just doesn't feel right anymore. I can't see myself with you. At that point, I could barely breathe. Feels like I'm having a panic attack. So I call my mom, and she comes to pick me up from our place. My poor mom. She just looked so helpless while I sat there in the car crying so hard. I eventually got a nosebleed. So, I wish I could say this is the end of the story, but more has happened since last night. This morning, I'm on Facebook looking through a bunch of old pictures of John and me, sobbing uncontrollably and sending him text after text with reasons why we should be together. And I eventually stumble onto Mike's page through a tagged photo. He updated his status from a few hours ago to something along the lines of, "California was amazing. Wish work would send me for more than 5 days. My stomach started doing flips because John kept telling me he was spending the days he was practically ignoring me with Mike. But Mike was in California for several days and we're in Canada, so not very close. I freaked. I called Mike from my house phone, and when he answered, I said, "Hey, it's my name." And all he could say after a few seconds of silence was, "The F word." Basically, Mike's been covering for John's ass while John is spending time with the girl he's been apparently sleeping with for the past 6 months. I know this girl. John works with her, and she's always been really sweet to me whenever I've seen her at John's work-related events. Mike told me that John had told him he was falling in love with her. He said this after the incident in Vegas. He's been spending almost all of the past 2 weeks with her. Mike then told me he had promised not to say a word to anyone, not even Tara, but he felt guilty and was glad I called him. He apologized and said if I had to tell John that he told me, I could. That's all I know for now. I haven't bothered contacting John yet, and I don't know if Mike told him that I know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've been throwing up all day. I took one of my mom's Ativan, and I'm feeling a bit calmer right now, but whenever I think about it, which is practically all that consumes my thoughts, I feel disgusted, humiliated, and devastated. It actually feels like my heart is breaking in two, and I have no control. I need to get my stuff from our place. I need to find a new place. We have a dog. Who gets the dog? I love my dog. It all feels so surreal. Edit. John called me a bunch of times while I was in an Ativan-induced depression coma. I woke up as he was calling me again and kind of just answered the phone without thinking about it. He was crying and apologizing. I guess Mike told him that I knew, and saying he was confused. He asked me where I was, and I lied and said I was with my sister an hour away from here at her place. I asked him if he was with her. He said yes, but that he'd be home tomorrow, so could I please meet him to talk about things at our house? I said, sure. I asked my mom to drive me to our place a little while ago and I kidnapped my dog, brought her back, and I'm feeling much, much better. I'm also not meeting with him tomorrow. You guys, I didn't think it would help this much to ask you guys for advice, but I've read each and every one of your comments, and dear God, I feel 1000x better than I did a few hours ago. Thank you, thank you. Like, I feel so different. It's weird. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.